Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin.
Good morning. How are you doing? It's 6 o'clock on this first day of October 2020. So the year is by and by coming to an end. CT, good morning.
Eric, good morning.
How are you today?
Today, I am well, thank you. Thank you for asking.
What's the material on that shirt?
As in fabric, the name of the fabric. I'm not certain. It's a question I never ask. It's the color and the pattern that catches my eye. Those are the details I really don't ask.
The rest is none of your business.
No, I don't ask.
Beautiful
But
shirt.
maybe I should ask. Huh? I'm going to start asking.
The material that it's made from.
I'm going to start asking. You've opened my eyes to a certain reality that I have been ignoring, and I shouldn't.
I hear there are very many names for these materials. I don't know. What are those names?
Organza, batik, cotton.
Batik is not the pattern?
No. Ankara.
I know cotton, I know synthetic.
Polyester.
Polyester, yes, that I also know.
You know
Beyond
chiffon.
Chiffon.
Chiffon is which one?
Chiffon is which one? Silk.
You see, you're doing very well.
Yes.
Wool.
Wool and cotton, the differences?
One is from sheep. The one is the plant.
It's a plant, yeah.
Okay, so what you've just declared in that statement that sheep are not plants.
In this case, no.
Okay.
No, not today.
Okay. Nduoko,
Yeah.
how are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
I am fine, thank you.
When
Are you
you mention that name, I can understand why karaoke refers to as Nduoka.
Nduoka.
When you say Nduoko, someone hears it as one name. Yes. It
Nduoko.
just hit me. Nduoko. Nduoka.
Nduoko.
Karaoke from Nakuru calls you Nduoka.
He does.
That's it. And it fits. And then our friend from Karen, Eric, what does he call you?
Duke.
Oduk, yes.
There's nothing I've not been called. There's nothing they've not called me, so it's okay.
Actually,
It's not okay.
When you hear, it is okay. When you hear, your hearing is actually already influenced by the playlist of names that already
The names in your
exist.
database.
Kabisa, and that's what I'm calling it, playlist. It sits there. So you said, which is it familiar with? This one.
This one.
So that's what you do, yes.
Okay, welcome to a brand new day, a brand new show. Today we'll be discussing a number of things. We have been seeing doctors going on strike. KNH healthcare workers apparently agreed to resume work after the Salaries and Remuneration Commission heard their cry and agreed to address their concerns. But healthcare workers in other parts of the country are still downing their tools, and more are even issuing notices to strike. Why? What exactly is ailing the healthcare sector? That is something we want to discuss today. Then also the central bank governor had some announcements yesterday. And just looking at the, what do we call them? Lifting of restrictions.
Further.
Yeah. So now there was some stuff that had been done. In fact, the central bank had agreed with the banking sector to do some things in order to ease the pain of bankers, or not bankers, but of the citizens who bank. But now the central bank is saying, all right, there's some things that now we can start allowing banks to resume, some part of resuming to normal. So we'll be discussing that as well. But we always begin with tracking COVID-19. In the meantime, CS Magoha was in Parliament yesterday, and he was talking about, the time to reopen schools is now, according to him.
He'll be all right. Don't worry.
He'll be all right.
He'll be all right.
Just give him time.
Don't allow him. He'll get with it.
I mean, so far he's not doing badly.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah, just kind of guns blazing, shouting anyhow. You'll calm down. Don't worry. He can say what he wants to say.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, let's look at COVID.
Kenya now has 38,529 cases to 4 deaths yesterday. So now that takes the total number of deaths in the country to 711. If we're looking at the number of cases recorded at the end of the month, yesterday, the 30th, 151 cases in Kenya. And now that sends that number to 38,529. Okay. Now, in Brazil, there's been hue and cry. Yesterday, they recorded 1,000 deaths. And everybody from medical workers to the Ministry of Health to government officials are saying that the lackluster approach to fighting this epidemic in Brazil is one for the books. And that's the reason why they're seeing what they're seeing. Lockdown was a thing of the mouth. Paying attention to restrictions, even any kind of government orders, leave alone the fact that the president and his wife contracted COVID, were hospitalized, got out of hospital, went home, and still it was like, okay, we have a lockdown in word but not in deed. And so people now are complaining because we see Brazil at almost 5 million cases, almost 144,000 deaths. Interestingly, though, from a population of 212 million, they've done almost 18 million tests, right? But then they're looking at deaths per population now at 676, which is higher than that of the United States, which we saw was pretty high, right? Not as high as Peru.
Deaths per million.
Yeah, deaths per million.
676.
Yes.
Jeez, man.
Yeah, it's a high number. So they're really struggling with this one. And I mean, if you just want to look at the number of cases that were recorded yesterday, I mean, at the highest peak was in mid-July, and they were looking at about 70,000 cases a day. That was the average in July. And now they're looking at about 33,000 cases per day with 1,000 deaths, unfortunately. Now that number has risen to 143,000. So now this is what they're saying. And now government officials are crying and saying, you know what, it's a little bit late in the game to now try and start, bringing about restrictions. Everybody's out, but now...
So we can talk about the government and what the government is doing, but also we can also talk about the people.
Mm-hmm.
So is it that the people are just going about their business
Yes.
because they have disregarded the fact that there is COVID?
No, there's...
Is it the attitude of the people?
It's a collective attitude here. So even if everybody wants to toss any kind of blame about, everybody is responsible here in one way or another. There's COVID. You won't now come and say, well, the government didn't tell us what to do, and so that's why we're not...
The government has not told me to stay indoors, so that's why I'm outside.
Yeah. So that's on one hand. But then on the other hand as well, it's just kind of like been, all right, is there a lockdown? Is there not a lockdown? Okay, well, we're not able to fund the lives of Brazilians as many would like us to, so we're just going to go ahead with things as normal. But it has hit hard, and it continues to hit hard.
It still continues to expose the government of Brazil, though. I mean, and if you look at what the president has done in the last couple of months, even with this COVID, how many times has he changed the head of the health ministry? Brought in some military officer and all that. And you still receive the kind of pushback that he receives. He's trying to bring in the military more and more into government operations and government affairs, but still not winning the confidence of the public. How many presidents have gotten in and out of Brazil's office in the last, 15 years? Come out, go to jail, come out of jail.
It's like a relay.
Yeah. There's something about, Brazil. Is it that the citizens are woke and therefore now they are demanding more? Or is it that the political system is...
It's a combination of all that. Usually these things, it can't be, and it isn't one thing. It's a combination of things. Now, this particular president is a populist. It is how he got into power. And what is becoming apparent is that he really wasn't prepared to govern. So long as there was no emergency that required some very serious thinking and action and intervention, he was fine.
Yeah.
He was.
But he followed the same cue as his neighbor in the Americas and started making statements that defied the reality on the ground.
That's very interesting because he addressed UNGA on Tuesday. And this is what he said. From the very beginning in my country, I warned that we had two problems to solve, the virus and joblessness, and that both issues had to be addressed simultaneously and with the same sense of responsibility. He highlighted social and economic measures in his administration that his administration implemented to address the COVID-19 pandemic. And he said that he views all of this with the criticism coming from different quarters as a politicization of the virus in South America's largest country. So people were using, essentially, all the different elements and factors that the virus presented to politicize.
That's what he claims.
This is what he claims. And he said it before the UNGA. So you can imagine the world was listening at that point. And he's basically saying...
But right from the very beginning, this man was in complete and absolute and undiluted denial.
Even when he got the virus.
Yes.
Even when he
It's
got
like
it.
he got something else.
It wasn't really...
Basically, I think what he was saying even then was what he's repeating at the UNGA. That from the very beginning, he said, we are fighting two things. We have the virus and we have... joblessness. So it's just trying to strike the balance. Of course, just like you said, he's a populist. So he did not want to appear as if he's stifling the opportunities for job creation. So it's a populist who is just looking at, okay, so what do people want? What do
Being a
people
populist is a good thing.
if I tell them stay indoors, then they're going to ask me, so and then what?
And then what do we do
Yeah.
when we're indoors?
There's this little detail. When you're a populist, people actually tend to listen to what you say. So if you become the chief naysayer and you say, this COVID doesn't exist,
That's it.
people are going to believe the presidency has said. Okay? Yes. Leadership at some level has very little to do, leadership here, forget politicking, has very little to do with populism. It's doing what needs to be done.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Now, playing catch up with this virus is fatal.
Making the hard decisions.
Yes, it is. It is.
There's evidence, overwhelming evidence, as to what has happened to people who took the issues of this virus seriously, shut down, the results speak for themselves. And then you have people who decided that this was a figment of the imagination of their enemies and who else and whatever.
Yeah.
And then, unfortunately, the reality of the disease was not informed, didn't get the memo. So it just keeps rearing its head. People just keep dying. And you can't hide that fact.
Still brings back to this issue. Look, how many people died of COVID-19 yesterday in Brazil?
1,600.
And this is not even the highest per day.
No, it's
that
not.
Brazil has recorded.
No.
Right?
No.
And the way they are living in Brazil is not even comparable to how we are living in Kenya. Obviously, there are some measures. Even with the government pussyfooting and joking around, there are some measures that have been put in place and there are some measures that are being observed. Now, look at what's happening in Africa. That in 6 months, we have 711 deaths.
And in one day, you have 1,600.
This happens in a couple of hours in some countries.
Minutes. I mean, you can imagine. On a day in July, for example, they were recording 40,000 deaths. This is a low number in terms of what they've seen. Why it has caused alarm and why everybody was reporting on it yesterday was that they seemed to have reduced. And then in one day, they went through the roof, quote unquote. And it looks like it's going to rise.
Again.
Yeah.
We have very many things to be thankful for.
No,
Very many.
We have
Not brag about, but just be thankful for.
Actually, some of these things have nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
It's not how clever we are, the actions we took. No,
Nothing.
not really. Because if you look at the debate that the scientific world is even having right now on the subject, people are still divided, because there are those who think, oh, it's because sub-Saharan Africa has a young population. But then you're told it's not sub-Saharan Africa. The whole of Africa has a young population.
Yep.
Then they give you figures, over 62% of the population of the African continent are below the age of 25. Okay? And only 3%, this is according to Reuters, are above the age of 65. Okay? And that scenario is inversed when you go to these developed countries. Then they say, no. But you know something? There's something called immunity. Given the very thing that the world has stated about Africa, and it's like the magnetic quality we have for attracting diseases, okay? Whether it's our poverty, whether it's our... There it is. And then some even argue, but if you look at Africa, the vast majority of the population in the urban areas live in slums. And true, they're crowded, and yet all the predictions, not one, all the predictions, with the doomsday predictions that had been made, none of them have come true.
Have
None.
come to pass.
You're right, Eric. We need to be grateful.
Yeah, we have a lot to be, not to brag and say, it's because of the measures that we put in place. It's because of our vigil. Absolutely
It's
not.
because we're announcing this every day. This has nothing to do with us.
It has nothing.
Because if you were to use that argument and you consider those who took even more care than us, and the numbers keep rising.
Yeah.
So how do you explain that?
How do you explain that?
Because they're taking care, they're making sure they do what needs to be done, and the numbers keep rising. Ours, the complete opposite happens, and the numbers keep dropping.
Dropping.
18 minutes after 6. Let's take a break, take a look at the weather. Our live stream is up, www.spicefm.co.ke and SpiceFM.ke on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Boniface Otieno, we see you. You say you tuned in today. You are around Siaya. And Laban Tanui tuned in from Nandi County. Good morning.
"24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
When you hit the jackpot, you count yourself lucky. But what happens when luck hits hard? Yes, that's what happens. Hit your lucky box by going to M-Pesa Paybill 290813. Input account number as Spice FM and then deposit amount 20 shillings. Then send an SMS picking any box number of your choice between 1 and 6 to 29302. Simple as that. Play today and watch luck hit you hard. Play.
All right, this morning, let's take a look at what it looks like. Nairobi is partly cloudy, mostly cloudy this morning at 15. We're going to see highs of 26 and lows of 13. Nyeri this morning is cloudy at 15 degrees, highs of 24 and lows of 14, and there is a chance of rains later on. Taking a look then into Nakuru, where it's mostly cloudy at 13, highs of 24 and lows of 12. Let's take a peek into Eldoret, where this morning it is partly cloudy at 13 degrees, highs of 21 and lows of 12, and a chance of rain later on during the day. 19 degrees in Kisumu and mostly cloudy, highs of 26 and lows of 18, and it looks like it will be a wet afternoon in Kisumu. Kakamega following in fine form at 16 degrees and cloudy conditions, highs of 24 and lows of 14, and thunderstorms are in the forecast for Kakamega. All right, in Mombasa it's mostly cloudy at 24 degrees, highs of 29 and lows of 24, and we will see some rains later on. It's mostly cloudy in Malindi at 24 degrees, highs of 28 and lows of 24, and a chance of showers there later as well. Let's take a look outside of Kenya and into Kampala. mostly cloudy at 18 degrees this morning, 24 degrees the high throughout the day, and lows of 18 with a chance of thunderstorms later on. Dar es Salaam this morning is partly cloudy at 23, highs of 30 and lows of 23 with showers expected later. Johannesburg, cloudy at 13 degrees, slightly warmer than it was yesterday. That might change though, but it will go to a high of 23 and lows of 12 with thunderstorms expected later. Lagos, the continued rain, the rain keeps coming down. Scattered showers this morning, 29 degrees, and the rain will go throughout the day, highs of 29 and lows of 23. Looking out east into Beijing, where it's cloudy at 17, highs of 23 and lows of 12, and partly cloudy conditions to continue later on in the day. All right, and in London, it's partly cloudy at 12, showers expected later with highs of 14 and lows of 10. And in Paris, the rain is coming down at 15 degrees, and it's going to be all through the day. Then with highs of 17 and lows of 11. And finally, for now in New York, still Wednesday night, but clear skies at 18, highs of 26 and lows of 16.
Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done
32
right.
minutes after 6 o'clock. Good morning, and thank you very much for tuning in to the Situation Room this lovely Thursday morning, the first day of October. CT Muga, what is today's proverb?
Today's proverb is from Ethiopia. Next door. You may have two legs, but you can't climb two trees at the same time. One leg per tree.
One leg per tree?
Can't work.
No. Okay.
You may have two legs, but you can't climb two trees
At the same time.
at the same time.
No,
Very true, actually.
it is not possible.
Impossible.
No, it's not possible.
Impossible.
Even if you wish it, want it, try it. Not possible.
I always make...
And not possible.
Okay. All right. So let's look at the headlines in the papers today. Where do you want to start?
Okay. So, 405 parties. Did you know that there were that number? Line up for Ruto-Raila duel. Heightened activity at the registrar of political parties points to the power games, political skullduggery, and schemes to cash in on the aggressive competition expected should the two rivals go against each other in the 2022 presidential election. So it said that everybody is scampering about to try and align themselves properly. Okay?
How much do people pay for this registration of political parties?
I don't know.
Must be as cheap as buying a KDF ngumu.
Cheap as what?
He was
It must
mumbling
be
to
cheap.
himself.
Oh, he was
Buying-
talking to himself. Okay.
Buying a KDF. You know what a KDF is?
Kenya Defense Force.
No. Well, yeah, it's kind of defense force. But then there's also the other thing called a KDF, the one you eat. It's called a ngumu.
That very firm
That
mandazi.
is very firm, yes.
So why can't you just call it mandazi?
Because it's not a mandazi. Mandazi is not firm. Mandazi is hollow.
Eating it is akin to warfare.
Oh, okay. See, now that makes sense. That's why it's called a KDF. Kuduf. Okay. So,
One bite, you can find you've actually left your teeth
in the thing.
in the thing.
Okay. So what they're saying essentially is that bitter exchanges between the Deputy President William Ruto and opposition leader Raila Odinga are pointed to the expected fierce campaign for the 2022 general election. Here it says 2002, but we're going to assume it was 2020. The huge number of applications also points to the power games that are likely to take place should the two go head to head. The Office of the Registrar of Political Parties has been a beehive of activity, what with a staggering 405 applications to process in less than 2 years to the next polls. Already the political landscape is crowded with 83 parties registered last Monday and another 7 waiting full registration, according to the official records from the ORPP. The 7 provisionally registered political parties include Kenya Moja People's Party, Africa Development Congress, Umoja Summit Party, National Reconstruction Alliance, Party for Growth and Prosperity, Entrust Pioneer Political Party, that's a mouthful, and Party for Peace and Democracy. The law bars a political party that has been provisionally registered from participating in an election. Now, with funding from the Exchequer out of reach for the majority of the parties, since access is pegged on performance in previous elections, experts say state funding could not be the reason behind the avalanche of new parties. So, I mean, from this is essentially you're going to find a lot of people jumping to smaller parties in order to align themselves.
There's no
politically.
Jubilee Asili?
Just no, in the ones that we have listed so far, no.
Actually, the what is most likely is not even jumping. Remember, politics in this country at some level is actually a business, a rather serious business.
Yes.
Okay? And what I think has become apparent with the time is that you may have 2 main parties, even 3 main parties, but it doesn't kill you to have your own little party, duly registered, has met the criteria for a registered political party, because who knows, somebody may want to buy you or buy that political party. Or somebody may have problems within their political party and want to jump ship. So the ship is being prepared.
So it's just like an insurance. It's an investment.
It's an investment. It's a business. It's a business model that we have in Kenya. Remember, we had some political parties I had never heard of, like Tip Tip,
Yeah.
that became famous because they afforded. That is before our legislation disallowed this issue of just jumping from one political party to the other just around the time of the election. You could move. You have your political this and the other, and that party decides you're not fit. You move to the next one immediately.
Chap chap.
Yes. So think of it in a larger sphere where now we know who the 2 horses are and the race is on. Surely every political party will want to claim that they have people. And this is Kenya, whom they can give you. They can transfer to you.
Actually, the water was muddied a little bit. Not quite a little bit, but quite a bit with the Constitution when it allowed independent candidates. Because prior to that, the only thing you needed to do is have a political party duly registered and duly compliant. Let people go to nominations in the big parties. Let them lose in any manner that they feel was unfair. They look for another ticket. And there you are. You are dishing out tickets to candidates. As long as you pay a membership fee of X, you can join this party. But now the Constitution came in and said, oh, you can't hop from one party to another during the official campaign period.
However,
You cannot be an independent candidate. So once you have participated in the primaries of one political party,
you can't.
you cannot join another party.
Another one.
Can you imagine how bad that was for business?
It's actually very bad for business. It's not good.
So good for business.
It's a negative game changer for business.
So now here we have 405 parties that have applied to be registered. But all of them, okay, I don't know how now we are connecting the 405 to just these 2 political rivals, Ruto and Raila. Raila is unlikely to get out of ODM. Well, you never know. But Ruto, yes, may opt to get out of Jubilee or may opt to stay inside Jubilee. But even if he were to step out of Jubilee, just one party is enough.
Party. Well,
Or you may have now these other small parties coming together, just like we saw in Jubilee.
Remember, Jubilee was a vehicle that was set up specifically for an election. It's not as though it was some long-standing party that was known for its cockerel or for its goose or for whatever bird.
Yeah.
No.
Or gander.
Or duck.
Okay. Voila.
Okay, you guys, it's all right. Just be nice. It's October.
Oh, we like farm animals.
Yeah, what's good for the goose is also good for any other.
Avian creature.
Okay.
Can be a male. Is goose male or female? Who's gander? Gander is
the male.
Gander is Mr. Goose is Mrs.
Is Mrs.
Yes, or Ms.
6:30. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads, and then we look at other headlines. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM.
Okay, so Mombasa Road already is bumper to bumper. Actually, let's go beyond bumper to bumper. This one is it's a parking lot, and people are in all kinds of different directions, all the way from Gateway Mall to the SGR. That stretch is a pain. JKI inbound. We know that there is construction that's going on there, and so that's affecting traffic. Anybody who's coming in from there today is already facing nightmare traffic, guys. So Mombasa Road already not looking very good, and you get in from Kitengela and then you join Mombasa Road and then you're stuck this morning, and that's what it already looks like at 6:30, and it's likely to be that way for some time now as we go forward. Coming off of Figure Road at the moment is not too bad. You're going to get into the CBD without too much of a headache. Can't say so much for about 7 o'clock or thereafter, because it's likely to clog up by virtue of the fact that things have just started. Okay, so we're going to keep a lookout and see what it looks like, but not too bad except if you're on Mombasa Road. Let us know, 40127. That's how you can text us and let us know where you might be stuck, or where you find an alternate route that folks can use. We'll keep you in touch.
Spice FM, Malindi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
All right, 26 minutes to 7 o'clock. Welcome to the conversation on this first day of October 2020. Jakoru says, good morning, nice to be in the Situation Room. Eric, the first time I heard the name Ndu Oko, I thought it was some kind of Nigerian delicacy, only to realize that it's beautiful and intelligent face. There's a beautiful and intelligent face to it that brightens my day. You act like you're brightening Jakoru's day. I still hear it pronounced Nduoko.
Ndu.
Yeah.
Oko.
It is
So,
Ndu Oko.
Oko.
And it's a short name for?
Ezioko Bundu. Siti, why are you touching your head?
You know, this morning I'm actually being overwhelmed. First,
You too?
somebody refers to you as a delicacy.
Can you imagine?
Then
Delicacy. Delicacy is something you eat.
I'm merely I am actually quoting. It's not my view on the subject. Yes. And then your full name. That
Tongue
one.
twister.
No, it's not a tongue twister.
Coming together.
It's a sort of name that makes you pause and think.
Don't just see me like that.
No, we should see you like.
So just to clarify, it's not the way we pronounce Kenyan names. If it was Kenyan way of pronouncing, we would have said Ndu. Ndu.
Most Kenyans say ndu.
Ndu. Because that's what we say.
And
Ndono.
others here do.
Others here do.
It is not do.
It's not sister do.
So it's Ndu.
The emphasis has to be on the right syllable.
Ndu.
Yes.
Ndu. Okay. Other headlines in the papers this morning. The Standard.
Yeah. Interesting.
Maraga's Tano Tena gift for Uhuru, according to Attorney General Justice Kehara Kariuki. He says the government's chief legal advisor argues that the term of MPs is tied by the law to the president through the election date. If Chief Justice David Maraga's advice is heeded, he cautions that dissolution of parliament will inevitably alter the length of President Uhuru Kenyatta's tenure. Basically, what he's saying is what has been argued many times, and that's what even they've gone to seek the interpretation of the courts. If the parliament is dissolved and we go into a fresh election, so is the new parliament going to serve a fresh term, or is it going to be considered a general by-election and continue this term to the end? Now, if it's considered to be a fresh term, then there's the other part of the constitution that says that a general election shall be held together for all the seats. So if they're going to serve a fresh 5-year term, does it mean that the governors, that the MCAs, that the president will then extend until the end of this new term of members of parliament? Or what does it mean? Well, the AG, Paul Kehara Kariuki, argues that this is what would happen. That then you have extended the tenure of President Uhuru Kenyatta until the end of the new term of parliament.
Until the end of the new term of the parliament that
That would
essentially
now
would be instituted.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
That he says the
Can
law
you
does
see
not
people going a
spell
little
out.
bit crazy with this statement?
Completely.
Yeah.
The law does not spell out whether to hold a general election or a by-election. It's unclear whether the elected MPs will end their term in 2022 or if they will get 5 more years. The Chief Justice's decision was meant to cause harm to the country. His decision has ramifications to devolved units of government. His advice is a recipe for political, social, and economic havoc. The president can choose to ignore Justice Maraga's advice because there are no timelines that have been given. And then he says there are no funds to carry out an impromptu general election.
Who argued this?
The Attorney
Attorney
General,
General of the nation.
retired Justice Paul Kehara Kariuki.
Since when has money been
An
a
issue.
fundamental issue in these things? We kept being told there was no money, absolutely.
No, we kept being told to prepare for a referendum.
Yes, and then we were being told that the BBI reggae will continue. And all those things cost money.
Yeah.
And at the same time, same breath, you're being told there's no money. Which is which? My position still remains the same. There's money.
There is pesa iko.
So,
well, let's see what the courts actually come up and say, because this is one of those ones that we could be hitting at the Chief Justice for just following what's written to.
you know, this
in
thing
the
is going to end up in
Constitution.
the Supreme Court again.
Of course.
Because you'll go to court, it'll be appealed, it'll at the appeal level, it'll be appealed again, Supreme Court. And guess who heads the Supreme Court?
The Chief Justice.
Yeah, he's a member of the Supreme Court. So let's see.
But then again, in this same standard, they say, yeah. Anyway, I was a bit spoiled for choice as to which one to read first. State officers off the hook as House rejects MES report. It's on page 8 of the standard.
Yeah.
The Senate decision means that no one will be held accountable over the controversial 63 billion leasing of medical equipment. Really? Really?
Yeah.
The president should dissolve parliament.
Kabisa?
No,
If
the sooner the better.
if it's like this,
If this is what it is,
It's been like this. Now it's
Yeah.
obviously like this. Dissolve it. Dissolve
yeah,
it.
just go
Dissolve
to ground
it.
zero
Dissolve
and then
it.
build
Dissolve
it
it.
again because it's just
All
ridiculous.
this back and forth and storytelling and lots of English words and statements. Go home.
but why, City?
You know,
Because you're doing everything but that which you should be
if
supposed
you
to be doing
listen
as leader.
to the argument that was put forward by the Senator, Mheshimiwa Mutula Kilonzo Jr., it was indicative of wrongdoing. How then do you have a report that has details that outline wrongdoing and even point to where the wrongdoing was? And then in the conclusion, you come to the point where you say, there's nothing to answer. What on earth do you mean there is nothing to answer? How? How does that come about?
There's something just that, yeah, you know.
All that, this happened, this was taken, there was this irregularity, there was the other, there was the other, there was the other. Now, if you want to understand how this water, this one doesn't get even mud, this one gets bloodied, okay? Auditor General has a different story. But this one is with KEMSA. Auditor General has come and said, hey, excuse me, procedures were not followed, this happened, this, details. The report that we heard, or the reporting of what had been found as we heard it, was not dissimilar to what the Auditor General has presented or what we have read in the papers. So how then, with all that, do you conclude that they have nothing to answer? How?
No, for now, basically what you're saying is that there's no report that can then be acted on.
Eric,
And this is why.
that's precisely what I'm saying.
Because
How?
the committee, the senators felt that this committee did not pin people down. In its final recommendations, it's not saying, now, investigate so-and-so or prosecute so-and-so, because that is what they expected that the committee should have done. After you've told us all these things, how many pages again is it? 300 and something.
You've not given.
At the end of all that, you have not said, now, having gone through all these things, we find that so-and-so ought to be prosecuted. We find that so-and-so ought to be investigated further. So-and-so, so-and-so. We find that this company ought to be blacklisted. You know, those are the recommendations that you'd expect out of that, because you've established that there was complete malfeasance here. And you've even said that this, what we are seeing, was a criminal enterprise. That's how you start the report, by saying this was a criminal enterprise. In fact, you say, as a matter of fact, the committee established that this was a criminal enterprise. So now then, I see where the senators ganged up together to do this.
Yeah.
Because they said they wanted, first of all, to amend that report so that they can put in names of people implicated, personalities and firms with local partnership implicated and added into the recommendation.
Otherwise,
The
this
speaker
is
said,
just
no,
another
no,
report.
you,
Yeah, because
we can't do that. So they were like, all right, come on, Evo, throw the
No.
whole thing out, bring it afresh.
start again.
Let it be investigated let this report then go to another committee. Let the committee amend this report and then let it be brought afresh
give
as another
recommendations.
committee's recommendation.
I tend to agree, because guess what? It's just going to join the graveyard of all the other reports that have been done, and then action has not been taken, and then money has disappeared, and then something else is going to
30
come
million
up.
to be precise.
Exactly. Something else is going to come up, and then it's going to be forgotten, because all you've done is you've written a report and you said, yes, there were anomalies here and there, money was lost. However, we move on. Now, without naming and shaming, without making recommendations for further investigations, without saying that somebody has to take responsibility, it just becomes 350 pages of black and white, and that's it.
Let me ask the question. I've understood the rejection as you presented. Did Senate also have an alternative? Instead of simply rejecting it and saying, let's kick this can down the road, did they have an alternative? Could they not have tasked that same committee and said, excuse me, folks, if this is the information you have, there must be people behind it. Go back and give us those details.
Coming off the premise that, just from what they said, there are some individuals on the same committee and even within the House who could have been or are already compromised with vested interests.
Yep.
And so to get this same committee who's done this report to go back and say, now, name people would be very difficult, according to them.
It would not be difficult because
Minority Leader James Orengo, just to attempt to answer your question, he proposed the report becomes part of a record of the House, and instead of making recommendations, direct a special counsel to investigate and come up with a solution that will be agreeable to the people. He says, in fact, the prosecutorial and investigatory arms of government have more information than we have. What have they done? You getting that?
That can is being kicked down the road.
Kabisa?
The only thing is that it's not one person kicking it. We had Senate.
They did not reject this and then say specifically, so we have rejected this. Now the next issue to discuss is how can we form another committee? How can we task this committee on health? The Senate Committee on Health, for example.
They had this discussion. It's not as though it was a 5-minute discussion. The very suggestions as to what should be done are embedded in the report itself.
Yeah.
If there are anomalies, the anomalies point you to what ought to be done to rectify those anomalies. Is that not so? Is there any indication that Senate gave those directions? The answer is no, they didn't. Yes. So this thing of amorphously speaking and saying, well, there are people involved, the whole lot of them are involved. This issue of trying to single out and appear as though some of them are not quite some of them can't be implicated. They're the good people who are out. No, it's a no. It's the whole lot of them.
They were just playing us.
It's the whole. We're being played here.
Frothing at the mouth,
Thoroughly.
talking loudly and saying, "How come this committee was not? How come they did not mention so and so? We reject this report." No, this is. And then they don't tell us, so what's going to happen?
By the time you write this report and you're calling them a den of thieves, because that's what you're doing,
Yeah.
and you're saying this is a criminal enterprise, you can't have a criminal enterprise without criminals, okay? So surely who are these criminals?
Yep.
Say who they are.
Yep.
A criminal enterprise does not exist on its own. There have to be people behind it. Who are they? If you are so clear and categorically clear about what it is that this entire exercise was, then surely this little bit which actually explains to you in detail, so and so, whose job in government is this? So and so, who's a businessman who does this? So and so, how can that be difficult? Because that process doesn't move on its own. It's moved by people.
The only thing that brings about difficulty then here is if, one, there are people with vested interests, you know who these individuals are, and you're trying to afford them some kind of protection. Period.
I am actually going to take it further. I would actually argue there are people with vested interests. That's the red herring. That's what they snow us with. That's what they tell us that we feel. Oh, so there's a select group. There is no select. There's no select group.
All
here.
of them have been
all
seen.
of them.
There is no select group here. None.
All of them have been seen.
It's a question of whether you're directly involved or you're indirectly
Or you're just on the
involved.
periphery.
Yes, exactly. But no.
We should have this conversation actually later and ask the people then what should we demand to see at the end of all these investigations and all.
Yeah,
What is
then
it?
what do you ask
How do you
for?
spend 30 million shillings, hard-earned Kenyan shillings of the Kenyan taxpayer, and then you come up with this?
Yeah.
And
it
then
goes-
we're supposed to just
it goes to the
take
floor of
it
the
and
House.
say,
Take it and say,
no.
oh, okay, that's actually what happened. Absolutely,
no way. No way. 12 minutes to 7 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. David Neto, good morning. Kisumu is listening. All right, that's good. Johnson Cordero, listening as usual, keep informing us. Yes, Santa Sana for doing that. Komarok, locked in as usual. And this is Abdikadir Abdallah. Good morning, Abdikadir. Well, let's take a break. We'll be back shortly.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Spice up your life.
10 minutes to 7. Let's look at other headlines. City, what do you have?
What I have, my dear friend, is something particularly interesting on page 5 of The Nation. We touched on it when we were looking at the headlines, but I want to touch on something else, an aspect of it. How 2022 Raila versus Ruto duel has fueled party registration. Now, there's something that doesn't come out in this. And in my opinion, if I look at the wording of any article that deals with 2022, it's like it's incomplete unless the names Raila and Ruto are mentioned. And also, it has to be accompanied by adjectives that give the impression that this is a do or die competition that has begun in earnest. Read. Amidst bitter exchanges, I'm reading and I'm saying, bitter. These are politicians. Politicians say all sorts of things about each other all the time. There are those that fall in the category of hate speech. There are those just that fall in the category of ugly nonsense. But politicians say crazy things about each other all the time. Some are not in the media, but we, the media, we seem to be fueling this thing.
We're
are
also shaping a narrative,
Yes.
that these are the only candidates who
Yes.
people should consider
Yes.
on the ballot.
That to me is not true. It's absolutely not
Many
true.
other people have already expressed interest in wanting to become president. For example, Kivutha Kibwana,
Yes.
Dr. Alfred Mutua,
Tour. Yes.
ANC leader Musalia Mudavadi.
Yes. But this, Eric, you've actually understood me perfectly, because it's like we, the media, have decided that we're going to make this thing a two-horse race.
Yeah.
And we're going to ignore everything else that has happened. Because we've been told very categorically by some of these would-be candidates that they actually want to present themselves to the people of Kenya and they also want to vie for this seat of the presidency.
Yeah.
Yes.
But somehow we've basically just looked at them, weighed them. What's that verse? Looked at, weighed, and then you found not
Wanting.
Not you
No,
found wanting.
the verse that you're talking about refers to being lukewarm. You are neither hot nor cold. Okay? I will spew you out. The end result is that if you're lukewarm, you're not hot or cold, out.
Yes, in the book of James. Yeah.
Yes. So now here, we seem to be leading the charge for this, and we are fueling it. This is my view. Because with every given opportunity, it is Ruto against. What if somewhere along the line, we suddenly realize that that supposed enmity that we keep talking about isn't there, and Ruto and Raila suddenly get along, and they have worked out something for the presidential race? What are we going to say?
Which you know,
It will
because
be
of the way in
uncontested.
which politics is carried out, that it could easily happen.
Yes.
It could happen, and everything that has been set up until this point would be thrown out the proverbial window, and people move forward. So now will the sycophancy join the new order immediately and drop all these beliefs that we've had before and move on to that? Caution then, I think, is required in some of these things. Sometimes just take a sit back, a look, step back, and just weigh.
You know, this is why sometimes I think when people say that we in the media have a bias and that we sometimes misrepresent things, they may have
may
a
be
point. They may
right.
have a point. They may have a point. Because the truth of the matter is, it's not as though Alfred Mutua has stopped campaigning. No, he hasn't. In fact, he does though very vigorously. It isn't as though Kivutha Kibwana has suddenly told us he's not going to present himself as a candidate. And come the day, before we get to the end of the year, there'll be more people who will be telling us that they want to become president.
Yeah. Martha Karua is also on the list.
Yes.
So what is this about, the duel day, blah, blah.
A two-horse race and so forth.
Two-horse race.
No.
Who said Kalonzo Musyoka doesn't want to become president?
Who told them? The only person who may want to be president but can't be is our president, Uhuru Kenyatta.
Ulisikia wapi?
See?
Ulisikia wapi?
Who told you he doesn't want to be president? For all you know, Maraga is resigning, is he not? At the end, no, sorry.
Is retired.
He's retired, not
Retiring.
resigning.
Yeah.
Retiring.
For all you know, Maraga may want to be president.
I'm telling you, and who's to say he can't? What will you say if that should happen? Okay. So, according to the Standard, how name-dropping Magoha lost the plot on schools crisis very quickly, and goes on to a small section of Magoha's goofs, which we'll focus on now. He ruled out the reopening of schools without evidence that pupils would be the super spreader of the virus. CS failed to look at the data from hardest hit countries, which showed no evidence of reopening of schools was responsible for a spike in cases. right? He should have allowed his proposals to be peer-reviewed before presenting them to President Kenyatta. Teachers were not involved in finding solutions to challenges, such as overcrowding in classrooms. The CS may have locked out crucial contributions by stakeholders by invoking the president's name, which he did on several occasions, where he had said appeared like an order from Uhuru and not a suggestion from the CS. Okay, for a man whose professional foundation stands on the strictest tenets of science, facts, and decisiveness, Professor George Magoha is fast moving away from the bedrock of his existence. Wow. Instead, he has over the past months steered the country towards confusion, double-speak, and indecisiveness that would make patients stay away from his stethoscope. Daniel Wesangula is not joking with this one. Even worse, he's quickly cutting the image of an uncompromising general who gets counsel from 4 people only: George, Albert, Omore, and Magoha. All of those are his names. While this stubbornness may cut for a suicidal army unit, guiding a country's education sector through such a crisis requires a little bit more guile and less combative temperament. So, saying this sector needs, Magoha to look at it with a softer eye and to be able to bring in stakeholders' opinions, because this last showing was clear that he had not included everybody and was kind of acting on his own with the voice of the president in his ear. So in this case, it was not the voice of the president that was whispering in his ear. It was George, Albert, David, and Magoha. Those are all his names.
Okay. Let me, just before we go to the top of the hour, there's an interesting story here, page 12 of the Standard. Magistrate sues seniors for denying her access to court. And this is Nyeri resident magistrate Damaklin Bosibori, who has moved to court seeking to be allowed to return to her workstation. She has gone to the Employment and Labour Relations Court, citing unfair treatment by the Nyeri presiding judge, Jairus Ngaa, and the Chief Magistrate, Wendy Kagendo, whom she's accusing of denying her access to the chambers. So, apparently, she had, been denied access to her chamber because of complaints from the Nyeri Bar Association, which is accusing her of demeaning utterances, indicating that officers working with the ODPP in Nanyuki and Nyeri are unprofessional. The letter indicated that the magistrate picks up quarrels and personalizes objective discourses, hence violating the Judicial Code of Conduct and Ethics. The members of the society do not share in your demeaning references to them and implore upon you to respect the offices they hold, reads a letter by the Association of Lawyers led by their chairperson Charles Karweru. The advocates are declining Bosibori's invitation to meet to resolve this issue. Big one here.
Yep.
So lawyers are feeling that this magistrate is completely demeaning. She uses unpalatable language on them. And then, so the presiding judge and the chief magistrate decided, all right, so wait. So let's first of all sort out this issue. And now she's going to court and saying, wait, I ought to be allowed to continue doing my work. Who are you to stop me from doing my work? Hey, she says that this letter by the Nyeri Bar Association does not amount to a complaint as it does not specify or indicate the originator of the alleged complaint. She also says, I also offered to meet the respondents and any disgruntled members of the said Nyeri Bar Association, if any, but none of them is willing to sit down. So if there's no formal complaint, if none of them is coming to say, this is the issue I have against you, so why am I not being allowed to work? Why are there no cases being assigned
to me?
This is unfair. Good morning. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. Keep it right here, because in the next hour we will be looking at other stories, the big stories happening in the country. For example, the healthcare, the financial sector, and all of them. And we'll also be live on KTN Home, Spice FM KE on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, www.spicefm.co.ke. And I can see Drums has said that there's KDF, posted a photo of KDF for you to see. You know that?
I get it now.
Yeah, you get it? It also says that they are parked crazy traffic on Mombasa Road. Okay, we'll be looking at traffic shortly. Good morning. It's now 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru. Traffic.
Okay, for starters, let's look at where there will be less traffic this morning. The commuter train route Embakasi Village Pipeline and Donholm is back. So that takes some traffic off the roads today, and you can be able to at least get where you're going with that. All right. Mombasa Road today is a parking lot. Things are not moving, unfortunately. And this is compounded by the construction that's taking place because of the expressway that's being built, right? So that's being constructed. So, guys, the next couple of weeks are going to look just so. We're seeing heightened levels of traffic all the way from the Signature Mall on Mombasa Road, and this is leading through to Cabanas and then out towards General Motors. You get a little bit of reprieve, and then thereafter Bellevue all the way then to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. Again, bumper-to-bumper situation right in the middle of traffic hour. We're likely to see this last for some time. Uhuru Highway also into the CBD, out through to Westlands. It's bumper-to-bumper. Coming in from Thika Road, the Pangani underpass, going then out towards Fig Tree on still on the Thika Superhighway, and then into the CBD at the Globe Cinema overpass. Again, moving very slowly today. It's likely to be a crazy Thursday. So guys, all I can say at this point is buckle up. 40127. That's how you can get us to know what's happening in your neck of the woods. If you're stuck somewhere or if you find an alternate route, let us know.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room.
Thank you very much for tuning in to the Situation Room on Spice FM, on KTN Home, online. 94.4 in Nairobi, Mombasa 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 Nakuru, Eldoret 96.7, Malindi 97.7, and Nyeri 90.9. Good morning to our audience on KTN Home who are joining us now. Welcome to October. We've been here before you. That's why we're saying welcome.
Okay.
It's been a lovely October so far. C.T. Muga, let's begin with today's proverb.
You may well have two legs, but you cannot climb two trees at the same time.
You may well have two legs,
But
you cannot climb two trees at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
This is from?
Ethiopia.
Right. The wise man of Ethiopia. Okay, that's an interesting one. It's quite an interesting one.
What has happened in Kenya in the recent past? Recent is like 2 days ago, from Monday that is.
Mm-hmm.
The president made certain announcements and relaxed certain restrictions that had previously been there in the country. But if one reads the papers and one considers what one hears, what the president said and what people believe arguably are two very different things. The understanding of what was being said was that the pandemic isn't what it was. The danger that it once posed isn't quite what it was. The levels have gone down. But what seemed to have been understood was that COVID is over. And yet this is absolutely not true. But of significance, just when you think that this is just the musing and the thinking of the ordinary citizen, if you look at the thinking of government agencies like the central bank, they also seem to think the same. Because if I look at the headline of the Standard today, right in the headline, CBK governor throws Kenyans to the shark. A bit dramatic, but if you read what is contained in that article, starting today, borrowers will be required to start servicing their loans as they did before COVID-19 struck. Okay? The full article is on page 33. if you look at the Business Daily, again, headlines, the bottom, they say, banks get central bank note to start blacklisting loan defaulters on CRBs. What they say is that the central bank has determined not to extend the 6-month freeze on listing on loan defaulters with Credit Reference Bureau, paving the way for blacklisting of thousands of borrowers from today. Now, if you look at this and you put it alongside what is happening in the country, then you get the impression that we are back to normal. So people who could not pay their loans simply because they are either had reduced incomes or had no incomes at all, it's like that has changed and they now have an income that they had lost, or that they were now back to employment, and as a result of this were able to receive payment, and so are now in a position to start servicing their loans. The question that one asks is, in reality, even with the announcement that the president made, and if the banks were in tune with what their customers actually face, what has actually changed in terms of the financial position of the Kenyans? Now, the central bank has its reasons. The central bank has looked at certain indicators. It has looked at the service industry. It has looked at businesses. It has looked at the increasing activity in those sectors. But does the increased activity in those sectors, does it signify, in all reality, a return to normalcy? Banks, for the longest time, were the one institution in this country that only posted reduced. This is a dramatic pause,
Right,
so that you can wait for it. Okay. Reduced earnings.
Okay.
Not going at a loss. Reduced earnings. And our banks, for the longest time, have some of the big banks, of course, and even the small banks. Others, hundreds of millions. The big bank is in the 2-digit billion profit range, which means that everything else considered, these are people who probably even had reserves. Now, when you look at the reality that we now speak of, you have to ask the question, apart from the central bank directives, what is it that the banks and these financial institutions, what have they done individually outside the dictates of the central bank? Because when an individual goes to a bank to get a facility, you don't go to the central bank, you just go to the bank. Your relationship is with your bank. What have our banks done to try and A, understand the plight of their clients and their customers, and B, what have they done to ensure that this problem that clearly is with our citizenry is not dealt as a serious blow or a life-threatening blow, but something that can be managed? What are these steps that they have taken?
I think you also have to ask, in the very beginning, what was their priority, really?
Profit.
Exactly. Was it profit or really to care? I know that there are very many banks whose slogan and mantra is, for the individuals, that we care for you and we are rarely interested in your well-being and your progress. And ours is to be the financial partner that essentially holds your hand on this journey towards, profitability as an individual, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, the overriding principle is that a bank is not going to get involved in a process that does not give them any kind of profit at the end of the day. At the end of it, going in, the original plan, the original idea is to use money to make more money. So then to ask the question then that were they doing then something, or was there a plan to make sure that they cared for individuals who might have been stuck?
How is this care manifested?
It doesn't. It was not in the blueprint of why they came together in the first place.
Probably the question then would be, during this period when they had agreed with the central bank that, okay, what we can do is we can extend the moratorium for people who currently servicing their loans and they're unable, they can come to us, because that was the announcement that was made by very many banks. Come to us and tell us, and let's discuss what we can do. So some were given the 3-month moratorium that was to be extended, and now we are saying that that provision is now off the table. Okay, so during that period, how many banks actually extended? And we've seen, we've talked about 1.2 trillion shillings worth of loans were restructured. So if this 1.2 trillion shillings worth of loans restructured, this is how many borrowers against how many total borrowers? How many people's loans were not restructured? We had very many people calling during this period and saying they're receiving calls left, right, and center from their banks, and they're being told, repay, or we are repossessing. people whose properties were repossessed by the banks during this period? Was it because they did not meet the criteria for the restructuring of their loan? Was it what is it? When you say 1.2 trillion was restructured, it's against an application of how many?
Or was it that 1.2 trillion was the amount that represented the outlay that the banks had, the sort of debt portfolio cumulative that the banks had?
Yep.
Because in all honesty, if you listen to people who called in with regards to their financial situation, you got the impression that many banks were just doing business as usual.
As usual.
Yes.
There were many people were calling their banks and saying they are told, all right, they're just giving the runaround. Yeah, you call us again next week.
But the
before
calls
next week,
continued.
you still receive calls.
The calls continued saying that, fellow, you still have this amount to pay and we're waiting on it to come.
Yep.
Meanwhile, the conversation continues in the background of, all right, you needed some help, call us in a couple of days and let's see what we can do. But really, in all of this, and then I failed to find, if that directive had not come from the very top, would it have been that a lot of banks who then said, come in and have the conversation with us, would they have made that offer if it had not come from the very top that, you know what, let's see if we can do something about this, let's have this conversation? Is it in their best interest to really help individuals when it comes to them being stuck financially? Is it really?
Is it really the interest of our banks to be concerned about the individual borrower?
Yeah.
Our financial situation in the country would actually lend itself to the view that they don't have to. Because so long as you can lend the government money, because this is what many banks do, you lend the government money.
You'll be fine.
Well, you don't have the headache of having to employ someone to call this person the interest rate is guaranteed, the country isn't going down. So if it is a profit you're looking for, you will make your money. So why do you need to go through this process of talking to this individual and the headache of the 2 shillings you need to get from them? But now you see where the problem arises, that in so doing, you've moved from the very basic principles of banking. The job of a bank is to buy and sell money. That's what they do. Yes.
So then if that's the job, CT, then they really shouldn't be worried or bothered or concerned about somebody who comes in and says that they're not able for whatever reason. It's not their job. It's not for them to listen to a sub story. No.
But if you've moved away from the basic principles of the particular discipline that you're in, then this is not a client. This is a bother. Someone coming to give you a headache and you want to get rid of this problem as quickly as you possibly can. It's a mindset. And those whom we come across in our banking halls, they are given instructions as to what to do. They don't make those decisions. Those decisions, even that bank manager you speak to, they don't make that decision. Then they're told, this is what we're going to do, carry this out. Yes. And the entire approach to it for the longest time, and of course with the exception of a few banks who seem to actually act on what they say they do, it's punitive. The opportunity to even talk, chat, discuss, and then the element of non-communication is profound. There was someone in the 80s, 70s, 80s, and a bit of the 90s in America, a gentleman by the name of Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader was known for one thing. Ralph Nader championed a certain perspective that lasted for the longest time. He took on manufacturers to their word. You say this is what you're going to do. If the reality doesn't represent it, my friend, you are in court.
You're in for it.
Yes. He took on the car industry in Detroit. He took on huge manufacturers. He took on everybody.
False marketing, false advertising.
Exactly. Now, what you said when you first contributed to the topic was the mantra, the statement that's supposed to represent the bank.
Here for you.
Yes.
Something like that.
With you all the way.
This is along the way.
With you every step of the way.
Now, these are the steps on the way. These things that we are talking about, this is the reality, okay? Because if you truly are with Kenyans, and then looking at this headline that we see today on the Standard, and it says what now? CBK governors throw Kenyans to the sharks. If it's with you all the way, so even in those shark-infested waters where people don't have money to pay their debts or to service their loans, I'm not talking about people who would have defaulted before, regardless of whatever was going on. Because of COVID and the things that happened, which is why we saw these conversations taking place, it would mean that enter COVID and somebody's wherewithal is affected, somebody's livelihood is affected, and then they're not able to service their loans as they ordinarily would. It would mean that even in that, you would be with them all the way. And that you should be the starters of the conversation when you realize, hold on a minute, the 6 months has come to an end, right? But it still doesn't mean that the suffering has ended. In most people, it still is. For most people, it still is a prolonged suffering. So are you really there every step of the way to make sure that these people who would be customers who are able to turn around a good profit in the future at the moment are not able to because of what COVID has delivered? I think that's the question.
We've been in this situation before in this country. And there was a point in time, and I'm not talking about 100 years ago, I'm just talking about the previous century, when these government bonds could earn you up to even 45% interest. 45. Now, what that meant, of course, was that any bank that understands their business would not bother lending to the ordinary small-scale borrower who wants to come, for the simple reason that you didn't need to. You are going to make a hefty profit anyway. Now, the problem with that was that particular season ended. All these seasons end. And during that season, if I remember, there were some big banks that in their restructuring to focus on this line of business sold off their branches. And they even put a minimum amount that you could have in your account, not open your account with, have. Now, I remember being marveling at that time because it's a bank I'd been banking with for some time. Now, that minimum amount was actually the sum total of my salary. So I was thinking...
So your salary enters, you cannot
I was
withdraw.
Thinking, okay, now, if my salary is here, and you want to keep all of it, so... how am I supposed to live from day to day? It became a bit puzzling.
Yeah.
Okay? But what it did was it also gave rise to other banking institutions who perhaps were a little more creative in the way they did things. They were able to even look at the interests of the so-called mwananchi. Now, we have banks in this country that seem to have taken that route. They seem to have figured, there's this person called the common mwananchi. Why don't we get them to open accounts with us? Because for the long time, a bank account is like a prestige activity. Not everybody had a bank account. Okay, but they said, no, everybody can have a bank account. And if you look at the thinking behind it, there's something they understood with clarity. One, the client base is that huge. And then you have an efficient system that enables someone to access money easily. That bank is going to grow. Yes, but it relates to the person who is there.
Exactly.
Now, it doesn't prevent them from doing the other things that they do. Lending to the government, lending God knows who. It doesn't.
In fact, they take the money now from all these people.
Yes.
And lend it to the government.
Because it's not as though people give you money and then use it the same day. No, they take it in bits. And usually if they're business people, they will still give you some more. And once they've understood that this money that they have with you is what enables them to even have access to more money, they will give you more money.
Can I flip the coin a little bit here?
Please, flip it completely.
You see, the banking sector is one of those that's heavily regulated. One of the reasons why we are hearing the central bank governor is one who's coming to say, all right, so this window now lapses from the beginning of October. It's because the regulator is the one who determines all these matters. So this holiday period that we were given for loan repayment is not a bank that can just wake up and decide, okay, so I've given people loans and then I can even extend some holiday period. No.
Actually, you can. There's something called a moratorium that banks have the leeway to give you.
Yeah,
they can.
But is there any regulation to that?
There is regulation. If you are, what you're saying,
Eric.
Yes, I know it's called Eric.
Yeah, it was just,
There were two conflicting things running through my head.
Okay.
All right. Eric, what you're saying is actually true. Okay? It's actually true. What I was thinking, my intention was not to contradict you. My intention was to actually add on to what you're saying by saying this. It is true that is a consideration, but the banks do have, within those regulatory constrictions, they do have leeway to make certain decisions that suit their purposes. That's what I was trying to say. That they can look at a client's position and say, this is what we're going to do. What the central bank did was, under the circumstances, it was now mandatory. That's what they did. It was mandatory. All banks are going to do this. And yet, from what we've heard, the banks didn't quite do what they were supposed to do, did they? At least some may have, but some didn't. But they made it mandatory, meaning whatever leeway we had before, now it's not leeway. This is what you must do. For the next 6 months, this is how you're going to go about your business.
Yeah, you have the blanket permission to do it, basically, for the next 6 months, and to consider, everything else that maybe the regulations stipulate, that you cannot offer moratorium for this, for the other. Now that is sort of lifted. And therefore now you can consider restructuring loans for very many of your borrowers. And that's why now the central bank is saying that was for this period of time. It has come to an end. The next thing that now you're going to have, according to what Dr. Njoroge was saying, the CBK governor, is that this would be a process that would see borrowers who had benefited from the standstill given 60 days to repay and another 30 days to regularize. So you have 3 months to regularize your loans. Okay? So it's also, this is the regulator saying, so this is what's going to happen. You have 60 days, you have 30 days, so you can regularize within that 90 days. That tells you that the regulator holds the reins to what banks are doing. Banks cannot just wake up and decide, okay, for the next 6 months, it's okay, when you get money, come and talk back. No. There's a regulator.
Yes.
And there are regulations that maybe do not allow the banking sector so much wiggle room.
Right. This regulator run by people, human beings in this country, who are cognizant of the realities being faced in this country. And these things that they regulate are not cast in stone. I think that's where we are coming from here. That the same way it was instituted initially 6 months ago, though it be by a directive from the executive of the country, is the same way in which such can be considered for the future. Taking into consideration that even though the 6 months have elapsed, that people are still in the same rut, if not worse, than where they were 6 months ago.
So what you're saying is that the CBK should have considered extending this.
But they actually have.
No, I mean, from what you're saying, they have actually. So if they have at this point, for that extra 3 months that has been given for regularity to come about with your accounts or whatever, then it's possible to look it's possible to still look at it further and say, all right, we're still looking at a situation where things might still get a bit icky for people. Is there something we can do? Should it arise that there's such a big problem and people are not able to get back into a cycle in which they were before?
You see, when we talk about people who bank, they are individuals, personal account, personal loan that you may have. Then they're businesses. And then there's the nature of businesses. Why I was saying that these issues are often considered by banks, banks understand very well that businesses don't always flourish. And when they don't, they will come in and tell you, why don't we consider this?
Right.
Why don't we consider this? And that's why very many banks have this idea of a top-up, meaning, okay, you've borrowed this, but you've paid this. You seem to be having a problem. Why don't we restructure this thing and lend you this so that you can sort out this problem? Okay? That understanding is always there, but it is in a situation where the business is just undergoing a little hiccup because of things. This one is not a hiccup. COVID is not a hiccup. COVID is a serious catastrophe that has affected us in ways we could never have imagined. So even the solutions that need to be brought up have to be unusual solutions.
City, I want to push you back and ask you exactly what do you want to see from the central bank and from the financial sector?
Well, Eric, thank you very much for that question. It's a very, very good question. Now, what I'd like to see is this, all right? Increase that particular moratorium period clean by another 6 months. Just for starters, say, okay. But within those 6 months, what has been stated? Within the 6 months, this is what we would like to see happening. So you ease people back into normalcy. In 6 months, in 3 months, 3 months will be in December, January. Not much may have happened because parents, human beings, teachers, Kenyans will be dealing with children going back to school, God knows what else, God knows what else. And now that we're talking about normalcy, people who pay rent and people who expect rent, those who expect will be wanting their rent. Everything changes. So 6 months gives you time not only to plan, but to be able to, if you're the central bank, to understand with a little ease as to, okay, what do we need to move? Because some of these things, you make a decision thinking this is what ought to happen. You may implement it and it doesn't quite go the way you want. 6 months. Guys, you have 6 more months in which time this is what we want you to do. Banks, this is what we expect you to do for your clients within the next 6 months. After 6 months, this is what now we anticipate and this is what we're going to do. Now, one can then not say that we're not given time.
So instead of this starting from the 1st of October now where the banks can begin, because what the central bank governor was saying, from the 1st of October, the banks will begin to look at the borrowers and assessing how they are doing in terms of their payments against their loans. And then now we start looking. So instead of this happening now, this should have maybe happened from 1st of January.
It should have. But also remember, the banks are actually limited in that, according to the central bank, they cannot give you a waiver beyond a year. They can't. Part of the role of the central bank is to regulate. So from a regulatory perspective, they can't. However, it doesn't mean that if that period lapses, you cannot then go back and say, look, this is the situation we find ourselves in.
Let's review this and see what is going on
yes.
and what we can do vis-a-vis the situation on the ground. I mean, I think those are some of the factors that you would hope will be taken into consideration. And it's not something that has never been done. That's another thing, that we're not talking about breaking new ground on issues like this.
No.
We're looking at something that has been done, could be replicated, has been done in very many other countries, are being done in very many other countries today because of this current situation in the world.
Let's take a break, take a look at what's happening on the roads as well, and then we'll be back. This conversation continues on Spice FM, on KTN Home and online. 26 minutes after 7. Keep it right here.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
All right, we're looking at mostly cloudy conditions in Nairobi. Still pretty overcast. Highs of 26 and lows of 14 today. And in Nyeri, 16 degrees and cloudy conditions, highs of 24. Nakuru will see highs of 24 as well, mostly cloudy at 14 at the moment. Eldoret is mostly sunny this morning at 12 degrees. The sunny conditions will not last, however, because there are thunderstorms in the forecast. Highs of 21 and lows of 12. It's 19 degrees and cloudy in Kisumu, highs of 26 and a chance of showers later on, coming down to lows of 18. It's mostly cloudy in Kakamega at 16. Also thunderstorms in the forecast here, highs of 24 and lows of 14. The rains will come into Mombasa later with highs of 29 and lows of 24. Malindi will also experience wet conditions in the afternoon with highs of 28 and lows of 24. Kampala is mostly cloudy at 24 degrees, going to highs of 28 and a chance of rains later on. Thunderstorms are what will happen in Dar es Salaam according to the forecast later. Currently mostly cloudy conditions at 24 degrees. Joburg this morning is rainy, light thunderstorms and rain at 12 degrees. Thunderstorms then will increase to later with highs of 23 and lows of 12. The scattered showers continue in Lagos at 29 degrees currently, and that will be the high for the day, coming down to lows of 23.
.9 Spice FM, Mombasa.
Okay, so the elevated highway through Nakuru town continues. The interchanges along the highway are being constructed now. So if we're looking at Nakuru town, there's going to be some heightened levels of traffic over the next coming weeks. Ken Ha is handing out those for everybody to know what's going on. So this is at the Nakuru Mau Summit. That construction is going to take place in a couple of days. So if you're outside of the city or in Nakuru town, around that area, know that if you face traffic, this is the reason. Okay, Mombasa Road, I'm sorry, I shed a tear because today it looks a little bit crazier than it was yesterday. This is because of the construction, guys, and we're going to keep repeating it so that you know what's going on. Coming into the city from the Thika Superhighway, a little bit of a mess right around the Pangani underpass, meaning bumper-to-bumper traffic, but that should settle down in a while. The eastern and southern bypass is open and not too much traffic there today. Let us know what you see, 40127. That's how you can text us. Also tweet us, Spice FMKE.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
7:30, this conversation continues right here on Spice FM, the Situation Room, also on KTN Home. Daniel Osiemo Ondiere says, what you seem not to understand is that banks are not charitable organizations. They have one eye, profit. That's why they work hand in hand with licensed criminals called auctioneers. Hey, Daniel, that's a strong one. So what we're discussing today, paying for borrowers as loan repayment holiday ends, and this is according to the CBK Governor, Dr. Patrick Njoroge, who said yesterday that, that period, the holiday period for repayment of loans that was agreed by the CBK and the banks would start expiring today. So from the 1st of October, the banks will begin to look at the borrowers and assessing how they are doing in terms of their payments against the loans. This means that borrowers who have benefited from the standstill are now going to be given 60 days to repay, another 30 days to regularize. So you have 3 months to regularize your loans. So now the banks can start having this conversation. What happened is that initially when this was agreed between the CBK and the banks were allowed to have a conversation with their borrowers for about 6 months to a year to discuss loan repayment terms. Many were told by their banks, come in, apply for this, come in, let's discuss whether you're going to get the full 3 months, 3 months, 6 months, or how long we can extend this holiday for you not to repay anything. And then also, what are the terms that we're going to look at? So all that was basically bank-based. And we asked the Bankers Association, why not just have it blanket and say, anybody who has a loan, don't repay for the next 6 months. And they said, you see, different loans, different products, different individuals. That's why we want people to just go to their banks and have the conversation individually, one-on-one with the banks. At the same time, we've had very many people who have called on this show, and we have seen comments elsewhere of people saying that they have tried to have a conversation with their banks and they have not gone through. And they have received calls from the banks demanding that you repay or we repossess some of your equipment, some of your property. A survey here shows that a survey of hotels by the CBK conducted between the September 21st and 23rd reported recovery from the COVID-19 disruptions that had led to closures in April and May. This is what is leading, informing the central bank. 89% of respondents were now open compared to 35% in May. This is just in the hotel industry. Respondents said bed occupancy and employment have been improving since May. So with this, the central bank was like, all right, so maybe it's not possible then for some of these borrowers to start having a conversation to regularize their loans instead of just extending this indefinitely. The other conversation that we're having is, okay, there are those that maybe would be able to have that conversation with their banks and start regularizing, and then there are those that may not completely be able to. There are businesses that are not going to be able to reopen. they've gone under with loans. Maybe the directors are trying and shareholders are trying to find ways of repaying those loans. There are individuals who lost their jobs and they have these loans. So what happens to them? What's the conversation that should happen in the banks with them? Let's open up this conversation to our audience on 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. SMS number 40127 or Spice FM KE on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram. You can tell us, first of all, during this period, this window that was extended by the banks, did you enjoy this moratorium of not paying your loan? Did you have a conversation with the bank? Did you enjoy it? Are you okay now to go back to your bank and start discussing how you can repay? Are you ready to start repaying your loan? And what else would you like to see offered by the financial institutions? What else? Is it enough, what we've seen so far? Complaints have been many, of course. There are people saying, what the banks have told us is that they want their money back. Just like Daniel is saying, banks are in this for business. They are also looking at their bottom line. The longer we continue with this, the more difficult it may become for us in the future. 1.2 trillion shillings in terms of loans that were restructured.
I have to ask, have banks gone at a loss? Let's look at these last 6 months where COVID made its entrance to the country, right? Very many businesses shut down within a month of COVID coming in. Within days, people had lost their jobs, right? Because things essentially shut down and people were working kind of like on a daily basis. And so once your business shuts down, you also don't have a job. Looking at different sectors, from the service sector, service industry, the hospitality sector, when schools shut down, the supplies industry also shut down. The food and horticulture sector had problems, if we're just going to do a list. Did banks go at a loss when this happened? Because when you ask somebody to service their loan, they tell you that my source of income has been affected and that's why I've not been able to do this. And then I take advantage of this moratorium then that has been provided. And then we ask me to go have a conversation with the bank, courtesy of CBK and the executive. All right, we can do that. But the institution then that is being asked, right, to afford these concessions to you, did they suffer? Did they bear the brunt of the blows of COVID? I really, really don't know. I'm not asking a theoretical question. I honestly want to know if they went at a loss during this time.
Loss as in did their profits
did their profits dip? Did their profits dip over this time?
Did it dip to the point where now
they were on their knees and struggling? Did that happen? I'd be really interested.
Well, they still haven't announced their results, so it's something we can look at when they give their half-year results. But then you've seen very many companies giving profit warning during this period when they're about to announce their results. So probably you could say that all sectors will have seen a reduction in profit. Some organizations may completely, record a loss. Now, whether the banking sector in the country, whether we have all banks that are regulated by the CBK, any of them going to record a loss completely. It's something that we can only wait and see when they come out to give their results. But I don't know.
But because if they did not, right, even if they saw a reduction in profits as is likely to be the case, then what is being asked for, even that 6 months extension that you're saying could be a possibility, then may not be a back-breaking exercise for them commercially.
Remember, banks function with certain structures. What, in effect, I was saying was change those structures. Not the policies, not the rules, just the structures. If I'm expected to pay 100 shillings a month, but the interest is 10 shillings, and I can afford 10,
take the 10 as opposed to nothing. Yes. And we continue with this cat and mouse game, calling me, causing stress, all sorts of things.
Yes.
This that I have,
take the 10.
Take it.
If I get
it still
20,
comes in.
Take the 20.
What does that do to the tenure? What does that do to everything else in the tenure of that loan?
Well, the truth of the matter is that it doesn't really change.
So I see what you're saying is that, a loan is structured in this way. So I've given you this amount now, and the repayment period is this. And working backwards, that's how we've come out to the principal and how the interest is going to be repaid.
And the longer you stay, the more you owe.
Yep.
So if you're paying the interest, it doesn't accrue, it doesn't pile up.
So if you say now let's restructure, reduce the amount that is being paid as an installment for repayment, what is it that we are reducing? Are we reducing the principal, or are we reducing?
No, you don't reduce anything. It's you're looking at what the person is able to pay. Remember,
You're still paying your loan.
with our some years ago, the banks acquired the notoriety of selling property, often, as was reported, at a value that was less than what it was actually worth. And there was a whole lot of things. Hence the comment that gentleman made about banks being in cahoots with some notorious individuals. Okay? Now, that changed and a law came into being, which caps it. There is a limit beyond which the banks cannot charge you. Beyond the principal, there is an interest factor that the banks can charge, but they can't go beyond it. Now, most individuals have no clue about this, none whatsoever. And the banks will not jump up and down and tell you. They will not announce it to you. Not really. They're actually under no obligation to announce it to you anyway. It is you who needs to actually bother and find out. The point I'm trying to make is that if you think broadly, and as we like saying, outside the so-called proverbial box, there are very many ways of skinning a cat. But this becomes a teeth-pulling exercise because we're skinning the cat in the same way throughout.
So you're saying the banks are not being creative?
I'm saying they should be more creative.
They're not being creative. They're not.
Enough.
They're not reacting and responding to the current situation in the market that they're operating in.
Yes. Eric, when one thing's outside...
I'm wondering whether you're being too harsh on the banks.
No, when one thing's outside
not
the
even
bank...
harsh.
Is this based on a conversation that you've held with bankers, or just studying the banks?
It's based on what I've seen. Prior to a certain bank coming into being and expanding their vision, banks behaved in a certain way. And then this particular bank opened up its doors so that the so-called mwananchi, the salt of the earth of Kenya, could actually open an account. Okay?
Yeah.
The mwananchi. And the numbers grew and grew and grew, got to 10 million, I'm told to go to 2 million, 12 million. Now, it was a game changer. Because other banks began to realize, excuse me, maybe we were stuck in what we were doing because it was making sense, but these guys have come up with something which also makes sense. It's not that what you're doing doesn't make sense, but this idea also makes sense. Now, it's along that line of thinking that I'm saying you need to understand that even within the regulatory orders that we have, believe me, banks have leeway.
Be creative, be innovative.
Be innovative within those boundaries. Don't go outside the boundaries.
Let's go to
Within
the
those
phone
boundaries.
lines. Muigai calling in from Kahawa Sukari. Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen and a lady.
Good morning to you, Muigai.
I want to contribute to the debate, and mainly the reason you see banks being sort of protected is because at the end of the day, an economy like this that needs to be sort of supported can only be resuscitated by two institutions. The first one is the government, and in absence of the government, then the banks have to come in and support, the economy to come back. Now, let's ask ourselves, who does the bank get the money from that they lend? Banks lend from the money they collect from the public. And therefore, if you look at, if you flip the coin a bit, it means then it's important that, this money that, the public has contributed should be protected.
Yep.
So I think that is important. But number two, I think it's also important for banks to think outside the box. Like you said, in the half-year results that we've seen some banks, having a haircut of around 90%, 40% reduction on their revenues.
Yep.
And that, if that goes to below zero and they are unable to operate, then that can affect the economy. But nevertheless, I think banks have to be creative. The traditional, like you said earlier, the traditional way that the banks have operated has to stop. So very inefficient, not looking at any other new ways of serving customers in a better way of new products. So it's important for all that to be put in perspective. And maybe at this point it would be fair to hear from, I know banks have a lobby. It would be fair for us to hear from the KBA chairman. And here, why, at this point, I know there are some banks which had done moratorium over to 1 year.
Yeah.
So what does that mean to their customers now?
It will be important to hear from them. Asante sana Muigai.
Thank you.
Eric Odongo, good morning.
Good morning, Lati.
Morning to you.
Yeah, today you guys are talking about bank. I just want to say something about them. I mean, my experience with them. Nilikuwa nataka pesa kidogo kwa a certain bank. Nilizungushwa, like, come tomorrow, come today, come tomorrow. I have to go to the Shylock. Ikabidi niende tu kwa Shylock. Tukaandikana down. Akani loan that amount. Actually, it was about 50,000.
Okay.
So for me, I think banks should they should go with the situation. Venye zinaenda. But you see, since nimezaliwa, bank are just there. They are stagnant. In the way they are working. That's why most of people, you see, us as youth, we opt to this mobile banking. Kukopa, there are so many mobile banking that we are in today. But the real banking sector, I think they need to cope up with the situation. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Eric.
Asante sana Eric. 0719-012-600 or Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Or you can also SMS us 40127. Your experience with the banking system during this time, of course, of COVID-19, when there was a window in which you could go and negotiate with the bank so that you don't have to continue paying the same amount of money that you were paying before COVID-19 struck. We'd like to know your experience.
Well, I'm looking at reports here that have been put together and contributed to by what you would call the big boys in the financial industry, from PwC to McKinsey and such, obviously who work in tandem with banks and financial organizations around the world. And one of the overriding things that they've asked banks to do is just this. In this period, be more accommodative, be more creative and innovative for yourself to stay afloat, but also for your customers to stay afloat. Because guess what? Even after COVID and beyond, without these customers, then the likelihood of you staying afloat then also dips. And it's interesting that they mention those things, and one of those is to be creative and innovative, and to take in from many customers that which you can actually get. I think that's very interesting, because those who understand the financials at that level also understand the really micro, that at some point you're really going to have to understand and accommodate the ability of the smallest individual who makes up part of this whole tree that you deal with as a bank. I thought it was interesting that they brought that into light, and are asking banks across the globe to take these things into consideration.
For them to do that, it means the banks were not giving these particular matters sufficient weight. Yes, if someone is already doing it, why tell him to do it? You'd have said continue doing it. Okay,
right. But in this case, they're saying now start.
Please reconsider this. The central bank has roles. It has what it does with the banking sector, what it does for the government, what it does for the economy. The central bank rules and regulations and even roles are actually quite clear. But what is also clear is if you were to take just a snapshot of what the CEOs in banks earn in this country, I'm talking about the big banks, it's a reflection of the sort of money they make. Now, with COVID, everyone was supposed to tighten the belt. And when I say everyone, I mean everyone was supposed to tighten their belt. I'm not saying they didn't. The belt tightening that I was thinking of is opening up the creative juices to figure out and say, all right, how do we ensure that we stay afloat? How do we ensure that money keeps coming in? And how do we ensure that we actually reduce this debt portfolio that we have? What do we need to do? Because if you employ the same activities that you've been employing prior to COVID, without too much thought being given to the subject, you will not succeed.
You'll be stuck there.
This is something new, for heaven's sake. It's not the same thing. You know, many years ago, when I was a head teacher, I remember there were some students who were always late, always. And before the teachers they always late, punish them. I said, no, can we find out why they're late? There's one particular student who even used to come to school with a pickup. There were those, yes.
Driving
Driving a pickup, yes. It was a day school. There are those who felt, the members of staff who told he shouldn't come to school with a car. I said,
driving.
no, why don't we find out why he comes to school with a car?
How old was he?
He was 16, 17, even 18. I don't remember his age. But what we did find out was that when he came to school with a car, his father was out of the country, and it is him who had to drop his siblings to school. And then it is him who picked up his siblings at lunchtime and took them to school. Now, the other individuals who always came late, when we talked to them, without fail, 3 in particular, they lived something like 6-7 kilometers away from school, and they walked to
They
school.
walk.
Yes, every single day. And what would happen is they would eat when they went back home. In between, they didn't eat. So I realized, wait, part of the complaint was that these children also slept in class. I figured, but if you're walking 7 kilometers,
You're going to sleep.
You're tired.
they're tired
Right.
in the
And
heat
then-
of Mombasa.
and then
going
you're
to
not eating during the day at
You're
all.
going to sleep. So now the option is, by asking, we understood what the problem was. So we were able to now apply
Deal with it.
something
right.
that could actually help and work. As opposed to simply saying, errand student always late. No. There was a very good reason why they were late. In the same way, the central bank was wise in telling customers to go back to their respective banks, because it's these banks who know you.
Yeah.
They're the ones who understand you. Now, because they do, they are the people you can have a discussion with towards providing a solution that is A, attainable, and B, sustainable. Now, most people in this country, when they have a debt, their knee-jerk reaction is to run away.
To run away and hide, right?
Change phone numbers, they'll find you. I mean, this is what people don't understand. You keep wondering, how did they find me with this number? Because you have the same ID. So they will find you. Banks perhaps don't invest enough in educating their clients about how they work. It's assumed that because I've opened an account, I understand how banks work. Banks don't function in tandem with the way we think. They have a very clear way in which they function.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand it, you'll be at loggerheads, and yet they're not at fault. It's you who hasn't understood how they work. Yes. It's like when someone, for instance, says that I went to the bank and asked for money. Oh, they're not going to give it to you because you asked.
Just you ask for it. Here you go.
No, it doesn't work like that. There are conditions. They will tell you, do this, do the other, do the other. And sometimes, in all honesty, it is not the bank, it's the person you're dealing with. You may have gone there because you know the person, and they don't know how to tell you, you actually don't qualify. What you want, we can't give you. But now, at that point is when they need to say, now, if you actually want a loan, this is what you need to do so that you can qualify. Yes. That's the point where now you meet the needs by giving information that would help this person qualify the next time they apply. Not just you don't qualify and then you leave it at that.
So whose job is it then to provide that education?
If you have a bank account, it's your job
Banks,
to ensure
the central bank, the individual borrower, depositors.
both. From the bank's perspective, as a layman, it is actually in your interest, because then you'll have a partner who is informed. You'll have somebody whom you're dealing with who actually has a very clear idea of what happens. And you, the individual, it's your own safeguard. For heaven's sake, find out what happens. Stop complaining about the interest rates. It is written. It's not as though they write it after you've taken the loan. It is written before you take that loan.
As you sign.
Yes, and it's indicated. Read it and find out. We all have our roles to play.
I do think, looking at this, the culture of then having a conversation to be able to find out this information then is something that either needs to be reintroduced and then followed very closely.
Yeah.
Because like you say, people are afraid to actually go and have the conversation many times. I think we talked about it here a couple of weeks ago when we said, you know what, don't run away. If they send you a notice, actually have the conversation with them. Perhaps they're on their side actually waiting to see if you're going to actually tell us what the problem is, and let's see if we can come up with a solution. Let's see how creative we can be. Let's see if there's some innovation that we can bring into this conversation. I would hate to think that it would be the desire to be to be nasty. I would like to imagine that they would want to have a symbiotic relationship between institution and individual. You know, so they want to be able to take care of your money, help you invest these other things, pay off your loan, but have a conversation with them and let them know what the real situation is. I think that culture of doing that is something then that could
It's important.
Yeah, for sure.
Brina Mwaru says, some banks were not honest. I had a biashara loan and I asked for a relief and they agreed. Later, they realized that I had another source of income and they took the salary without any notice.
Yeah, who was not being honest? Let's ask the question.
They realized they had
You
a source
see,
of income, so did you not tell them you had one?
I think there are two things here. So you have a biashara loan. That means this is for your business. That business is not being able to generate an income, so it cannot pay the loan. Then you, as Brinam, on your own self, on the side, you have an income that is sustaining your life,
Not your business.
not your business.
Yeah.
So should those two be looked at in the same way?
The question I would ask this gentleman is, when you had that loan, did you go and talk to the bank so that you can restructure it in such a way? Because remember, many bank debts are actually paid automatically. It's not as though you need to go there and pay. If you have money in your account, it will go. Yes. See, it's your name. It may be a business name, but they know it's yours. That system looks for that money. It's not the individual. The system looks for that money. And where it finds it, it takes it. Yes. So the only way to ensure it doesn't do that is if you go and talk to the bank so that doesn't
have
happen.
an understanding
Yes.
about what is going to occur.
And the changes are made within the system.
And they cannot take money from one account if it's not the one that's supposed to actually be repaying the
Servicing
loan.
that loan.
So, Brinham, it sounds like it's not just the banks that are not honest here. Because it says later they realized that I had another source of income.
Yes.
You
And
hadn't-
you're the same
you hadn't
individual who
told
owns a business.
You hadn't told them that you had this other source of income and all. Yeah, that's a conversation that I think you need to have with that bank, Brina Mwaru. Just go back there. Thank you very much for tuning in this hour. The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation on Spice FM, KTN Home and online. Time for us to take a break, come to the top of the hour. And then when we come back, we begin the conversation on what is ailing our health sector. We have very many healthcare workers across the country who are just going on strike and others giving notice to go on strike. What exactly is happening? Good morning. 3 minutes to 8.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4
Let's see
Spice
one or two
FM.
comments on social media.
Matt Timothy says, Spice from KE, run away and run fast from people who tell you that banks are there to serve the interest of their customers. Banks only serve the interest of their boards. So it really has nothing to do with you. And here you are thinking that maybe they care and they really don't. And that's according to Matt. So really changing the thinking when you get into any kind of commitment with the bank. It's not that they care for you guys. It's that they need to meet their profits.
David Neto says, I agree, these are charitable organizations, but they have to understand that they've got different customers. So what I suggest, loans should be paid, but at a fair rate, because not everybody is back to normal. That is David Neto commenting from Kisumu. Well, thank you very much for all your comments, and keep it right here, because in the next hour, like we said, we're going to start looking at the healthcare system. KNH workers had downed their tools for a couple of days. We've seen workers in other parts of the country, in several counties, also downing their tools, and these are just all cadres of healthcare staff, doctors, nurses, and other healthcare workers just downing their tool. What exactly is ailing our healthcare system? That's what we're discussing. Good morning. It's 8 o'clock.
Spice up your life. .5 Spice FM.
Okay, is it looking
Kisumu.
better in some parts? Yeah, okay. Still, the situation on Mombasa Road. Traffic is still heavy there, trying to get into the CBD. Let's look at Langata Road, where it's easier to come in through the T-Mall and then go to either Nyayo Stadium or then use Bagathi Way. Gong Road also looking good, right around the City Mortuary roundabout. Getting then either to Valley Road or using Gong Road to get all the way into the city. That looks all right. You're going to get into the city though, and then right around the Huru Highway, there'll be a bit of a clog up as you're heading then towards Westlands, coming from Thika Road, entering into the CBD. That looks good, not too much of an issue. Jogo Road, however, coming from industrial area, coming down from Buruburu also is moving very slowly this morning as you get to the City Stadium roundabout, getting into the CBD, the parts of the industrial area as well. So it's not too bad, except for Mombasa Road, guys, where it's absolutely crazy. Spice FM KE 40127. That's how you can reach us. Text us or tweet us.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
2.5 minutes after 8. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. As we begin this hour, let's first start off with today's proverb, C.T. Muga. This is from Ethiopia, isn't it?
Yes, sir, you may well have two legs, but you can't climb two trees at the same time.
Okay. Sometimes they sound as if, it's an obvious thing, but then there's a deeper meaning, obviously, to what is being said by the Wahengas. These Wahengas, they come up and say things, and then there's something that they're telling you.
What is also of interest when you talk about saying, people assume that it has to be in the previous century or something from antiquity. No. You even have modern day sayings. Yes.
You mean there are people who are coming up with proverbs?
Yes.
Even today.
Even today, in
fact,
this generation.
this one I want
You should identify them.
No, let me just mention one to you, which is a really modern day one. If you lose your girlfriend in a crowded bar, just start talking to a beautiful girl and she will reappear. Is that not modern?
The girlfriend will reappear.
Yes. That's very modern.
Okay, so who came up with that one?
This one, Tim Fisi in Kenya.
Tim Mafisi.
Yes.
It's not that you are hanger,
This is Mafisi, Kenya.
Okay, let's talk about our healthcare system. Strikes cripple health services countrywide. Nurses in Bungoma are accusing officials of not paying allowances from the National Treasury. The workers from the Kenyatta National Hospital have agreed to go back to work after the Salaries and Remuneration Commission agreed to review the workers' pay following a strike that ended yesterday. The commission said it has changed its stance on the matter and is now willing to do yet another evaluation of the staff. That is KNH, okay? Health workers in more than 10 counties are on strike For families, of course, it's desperation, tears, and death. Mombasa residents are seeking healthcare services from other counties as the doctor strike entered its third day. Let's look at other counties. Similar crisis looms in Western Kenya after nurses and doctors issued strike notices to demand better pay, allowances, and improved working conditions. The Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union has already issued a strike notice in Nandi, Uasin Gishu, Elgeyo Marakwet, and Turkana counties. KMPDU Rift Valley Secretary General Ismail Ayabe says its members are demanding the implementation of a 2017-2021 collective bargaining agreement. They're saying so they had conversations with these counties. The counties had agreed to these terms. They had signed a CBA. It has yet to be implemented. So they have issued a strike notice. Trans Nzoia. Our colleagues in Trans Nzoia have begun the work boycott. It will be the same case in the other counties next month. The CBA has not been implemented. This is several, you've seen, 10 counties, workers have downed their tools. We have seen this in the recent past. It's almost a given that if it's not this month, it's next month, there will be workers in a certain county who have downed their tools, and this is all in health. What this basically means is that at any given time, there's somebody in this country who is seeking healthcare services and they're not receiving. There's somebody who is sick and going to a hospital and they are not attended to well enough because maybe there was a nurse is on strike, or a doctor is on strike, or a lab technician is on strike. So you've gone to a hospital and you're not getting served. Month in, month out. What's happening?
And it seems to be something that happens all the time. And unfortunately, when they're going on strike, it's not necessarily for anything beyond whatever we agreed in terms of remuneration. It has not happened. Whatever we agreed in terms of increments in salary, increments in, whatever allowances, or it has not happened. It seems to be that the center pole for all of these strikes is money. And either going back on an agreement or even not considering the agreement. And then there's always a kink in the process of delivering proper health care because on one part, the agreement has not been met. Money has not been paid. People go on strike because counties don't have money. Every time it's about the money. So if we're looking at that and saying, if you then keep your side of the bargain on whomever side it is, SRC here, county governments on the other side, keeping your end of the bargain, then we're likely to see that the process would be smoother and smoother than when it comes to the delivery of healthcare in the country. It sounds a bit painful when you hear that lives have been lost because health workers were on strike. And the reason why they were on strike is because salaries had not been paid or agreements had not been met. And as CT will tell us, it's not for want of money. It's not because they don't have the money.
Every time we talk of health workers, we sometimes forget that these are life, bleeding, breathing human beings who have families and who have just the normal need that everyone has. Now, if you don't pay them their salary for not a month, 2 months, maybe going to 3, what do you expect these people to do? How do you expect them to even function? How do you expect them to even function in their place of work?
These healthcare workers are employees of the counties.
Yes, they are.
But these are the only county employees that we see going on strike every now and then. How come we don't see the other cadres of county employees going on strike? Is it because that they are not living, breathing? Is it because they don't have needs? Is it because that they don't have demands for higher pay?
Do they also have CBI understandings like the health workers do?
Yeah.
No, you may find theirs is different. The health workers have had these arrangements and understandings, and with COVID, they became even more pointed, as in, okay, fine, here we are doing this work, but we are at the front line of this particular health hazard, okay? But prior to that, given the hours we work and what it is that we do, there's an understanding that we need to get certain allowances for this. These were things which were agreed upon.
Yeah, but
The other workers have a salary which they are paid. That's the understanding.
Why
Sorry.
don't we see them agitating for higher pay, just like we see these healthcare workers agitating for higher pay? Every now and then, it's healthcare workers agitating for more pay. Why aren't you telling me that we hear the same
But
from
Eric-
clerks of
Eric,
counties, from
Eric, let
from
me
people
ask
who work in the environment department, the other cadres of
Let me ask
county
the question.
workers?
Let me ask the question. Is it that they're agitating for higher pay, or are they agitating for the fulfillment of what
Of
was
an
agreed?
agreement.
You see, like in this CBA that we're talking about in the North Rift, 2017 to 2021, right?
Yes.
So it was a conversation that was held 3 years ago. 3 years ago, they got into a CBA. Those 3 years ago, did we have the same kind of agitation by the other healthcare workers asking for better pay and better terms? Or is it that the other unions are not as active as the unions in the healthcare?
But it isn't. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, it could be. I mean, those are several factors that have to be taken into consideration, no? It could be that the person you have representing you then maybe is not speaking as loudly, or you're not feeling the pinch as hard, and you're all right to be able to get by. These folks clearly are not. With whatever it is that you have given to them, they are not going to accept it. Now, I think one thing we need to understand for a lot of these guys with the CBA is that the agitation has been done. That process has been completed. They agitated and asked for an increment. They agitated and asked for allowances here, such.
It was agreed
It
upon.
was done. It was agreed upon.
People signed on the dotted line.
Yes, the agreement was signed. Now, everybody went back to work knowing that because this agreement had been signed, this money then would come, and it allows you to then go on with your work. Now, when that doesn't happen, you irritate people some more. And they say, okay, in order for you to enact what we agreed upon, let's sit back.
And remember, it isn't as though this thing has not been enacted in a month. If you look at the length of time that these people wait for this,
We're talking about years.
Yes, there's sometimes a token payment this month, then back to factory settings. So the question you want to ask is, when you agreed to sign this along the dotted line, did you not know that there were budgetary implications for this? Did you not plan
It
for
meant
this?
an increase. Yeah.
And every once in a while, you also read that the government has released monies for these allowances, has done this for the other. So that now really muddies the waters completely, because you're asking, okay, they said there was no money. We read the government, national government has done this. The question may be asked, but okay, that's what they've said, but have they actually done it?
Have they actually done it?
The net result is that these workers don't get what they were supposed to get.
Let's speak to the Secretary General of the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union, Dr. Machanda Chibanzi, who joins us on the line, and we just want to understand this matter better. Daktari, good morning.
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
I hear you're coming up with new proverbs today.
No, actually, those proverbs have already been introduced.
But I had one from CP.
It's not his.
He's stating the proverb that has been in practice.
Doctor, the point I was trying to make is that everything changes with the time. We even have modern proverbs.
I agree with you.
Yes, as opposed to this idea that it must be ancient and it must be 100 years.
Wahenga,
plus.
Wazamani, who you can't even...
This one is Team Mafisi, and it's Kenya.
Okay.
Dr. Good to hear you. I mean, the last time we spoke with you, you were still battling COVID-19.
Yes.
So...
I'm well now.
Yeah, and now that you're well, you're back to the streets, so to speak. Leading your fellow doctors and your fellow union members on industrial action here and there. So we saw you, of course, agitating and joining the other healthcare workers at KNH. We are seeing what is happening around the country. Doctors issuing strike notices left, right, and center. We have also seen this. What exactly is the cause for all this to happening now?
Well, if you remember the last time I was here, that was before I got COVID, I told you that where we are going on the issues that have been constantly bedeviling healthcare workers, we are most likely to be met with industrial action.
You did.
And there is a historical there's a history behind all this. In 2015, we had a similar scenario, and by then we were just transitioning into devolution. We had the transitional authority back then, who actually sat down with all the unions in the health sector and came up with the issues. And out of those issues, then we came up with timelines to ensure that the issues mainly on promotions, mainly on NHIF cover, on salary delays are handled by the counties. That brought some level of harmony in the sector. And then, of course, in 2016-17, we eventually had to go on strike for what had not been implemented as a collective bargaining agreement, and we signed that agreement with all 47 counties and the national government. That CBA has an implementation matrix from the first year, second year, third year, and fourth year. So there are outcomes and deliverables for each year that needed to be implemented. We were supposed to have been having CBA meetings every quarter, at least in all the counties, our officials, branch officials in the various counties, just to look at the progress and to plan for the next phase of implementation. Come to 2020, and July this year, we are going into the final year of the CBA. Largely remains unimplemented in most of the county governments, with most county governments not even willing to come and discuss on the progress of the CBA. So you schedule meetings with county governments for the CBA implementation as per the metrics, and the meeting is postponed. So there's a lot of frustration by the doctors and healthcare workers on the ground on these issues. And the issues are, very simple, and it's very unfortunate that there's no priority being given to the welfare and plight of human resources for health. In August this year, we just there was a lot of complaints, and as the Secretary General, I'll be honest that ever since the pandemic began, there was a very strong call by the members to undertake industrial action, but I had to withhold that, and we opted to just dialogue and try and dialogue these issues. So the whole month of March, April, May, June, July, and we got into August, and the same issues were still not being conclusively addressed.
Yeah.
There's no office that we haven't written to on these issues. We did a memorandum to the summit. We did a memorandum to the Council of Governors. We've held meetings with them, but unfortunately the same issues remain unresolved. And during COVID, we also have to appreciate that healthcare workers have had to work at a lot of strain. There's very minimal psychosocial support, and when you start denying what is simple as simple as a salary, it's delayed. Right now, we are talking of counties that have not paid salaries for 3 months. We are talking of counties that have not remitted what is simple as NHIF, statutory deduction from the pay slip. So the healthcare workers go seek medical services and they have to pay out of pocket for that because it has not been remitted. So you're literally locked out of the same service that you offer. We are talking of healthcare workers who have loans from banks and financial institutions that have not been remitted to these financial by county governments. And so what's the result? Either your account gets frozen, or what is in your savings is now recouped by the bank to try and pay the loans.
So, Daktari, if I just come in here, to the best of your understanding, is this only happening to healthcare workers, or is it happening to all other workers in the counties?
It's not just healthcare workers. It's happening to the other counties. And I'll tell you one thing that is a common denominator in most of the counties. The other county workers always indicate that it is you healthcare workers who always speak for us. That is a reality. So they do have the grievances, and in fact theirs are even, if you listen to their plight and what they go through, it's much more saddening than even what is happening in the healthcare sector. The only difference being that most of them are also not unionized, and so as a result they have no way of undertaking these protests. And that plays a significant role, whereby you hear now it's the healthcare workers who are speaking out and bringing out these issues. And of course also the collective bargaining agreements in place give it a very strong push, because this is an agreement we signed for, this is now going into the fourth year, and it's yet to be implemented. And that's where the basics is, that then healthcare workers through the unions, and because of these collective bargaining agreements, are not able to hold, because this is something that is written, signed, and deposited in the Employment and Labour Relations Court as a legal document by both parties. But one party consistently keeps not adhering and not implementing what was agreed upon.
And what is the reason for that? That you've just said now, one party continually refuses to go by the agreement. Because I'm sure, because earlier on you said you had no other choice but to go on strike. So that means that I'm assuming that there was a conversation that was had after the agreement comes into place. You see that one side is not keeping their end of the bargain. And what is the reason that is given as to why that end of the bargain is not kept?
The first thing I'll say is that knowing our government, the priority is always on other matters, and there's always one thing that we normally say, that always follow the money.
Mm-hmm.
Issues to do with healthcare workers means you get funds paid to people's pockets, but issues to do with development and projects means that people have somehow a way of getting money out of that. That's the first. So the second thing you find is that there's no priority on human resources financing. To ensure that we have a planned way that if promotions are due, if we pay salaries this month on time, then subsequently every month we shall have paid. We shall make sure at least we sorted the issues of healthcare workers. The third thing is that a good number of the county governments have not had county public service boards in place, which are the ones who are supposed to sit and actually make sure that all these issues of employment are addressed. So you have dysfunctional units within the counties, and this falls mainly on governance. It's a governance problem, whereby you have the health department, you have the executive side of through the department, and then you have the county public service boards that are supposed to now work together to address the issues and plight of healthcare workers. But where you have a lot of politics in the counties, to an extent that you can have an absent county public service board for 6 months, then that means the county cannot function.
Yeah.
And so the human resources for health issues cannot be addressed conclusively.
It seems, though, that the tug of war continues because every time there's a strike, even before the very first time, before the CBAs were agreed on, I mean, and these were in place even before, your tenure as at the top of the union, right? These were put in place. But it seems that a conversation is had, like Siti said earlier, maybe some money is actually paid or something happens and then people go back to work. And then the status quo returns. So it seems that there's a bit of a carrot that's dangled, a bite of it is given, everybody goes back to work, and then some months later, we go back. So it just seems like an unending cycle. And it would seem on the side where the money is being controlled, they are also aware that they may say something to the unions or pay a little bit of something, and you will go back to work. As they say, a child grows every day. At the end of the day, the system continues and people go back to work. Health is delivered. The services are delivered. You make a little more noise in a few months, it'll give you a little bit more something. Everybody will go back to work and the days go on. It seems like a very dangerous place to be working from.
I actually agree with you. The sector we work in is very sensitive. Disruption at the workplace in other sectors will probably lead to loss of profit, and you'll talk about targets not being met. But in the health sector, disruption of service actually affects lives.
Yep.
And it's very painful to take up these decisions. I know several of these counties currently on strike that we went through the conciliation process. To an extent that even the conciliators appointed by the Ministry of Labour get frustrated because of the response from the county, because of the lack of commitment from the county government. And as a result of that, we end up in situations where we now have a disagreement certificate, and the union is now, as per the law, allowed to take whichever cause. You can either go to court or you can undertake industrial action. And that is where now that you find that in reality, we manage most of the management of human resources for health issues in the counties is on crisis mode. When there is no crisis, no one wants to handle the issues that are there. So even the interest to just address issues when there is no crisis is very minimal. But when there's a crisis coming is when now everyone comes on board. Okay, what are the issues? Let us resolve this. You agree at that point in time. You say, okay, fine, we'll even avert this industrial action and we'll resolve the issues. Given the timelines. After the timelines lapse, you find that there's literally no interest. I mean, I have several of my branch officials who tell you that we've been trying to reach either the county secretary, we've been trying to reach even the chief officer or the CEC, and they're just not taking calls to discuss this.
Totally unavailable.
Yes.
Let's take a break here, Dr. Machanda Chibanzi, the Secretary General of the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union. What we're discussing this hour is what is ailing our health system. More than 10 counties where healthcare workers have downed their tools. Others have issued notices that they want to go on strike. And it's all a matter of not getting what they bargained for and what they agreed with the employer. And these are the county governments. What exactly is happening in our healthcare system? Good morning, 24 minutes after 8. This conversation continues on Spice FM, KTN Home, and online. We'll be back shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru. Spice up your life.
Okay, Nairobi, 17 degrees, still mostly cloudy in most parts of the city today. Highs of 26 and lows of 13 is what we'll see. Talking into Nyeri, it's mostly cloudy at 16 degrees, highs of 24 and lows of 14. Rain expected in Nakuru later with highs of 24 and lows of 11. Currently mostly cloudy at 16. Eldoret is mostly cloudy at 14, highs of 21 with a chance of thunderstorms later on. 21 degrees in Kisumu, highs of 27 today and lows of 16 with a chance of rains. Kakamega the same, mostly cloudy at the moment at 18 degrees. We'll go to a high of 24. It's 25 degrees in Mombasa, highs of 28 and lows of 24. Looks like it's going to be wet in Malindi later with highs of 28 and lows of 25. Kampala is mostly cloudy at 19 degrees, highs of 24 and lows of 19 with thunderstorms expected later. Dar es Salaam is mostly sunny, mostly cloudy still at 24. Highs of 29 and lows of 23 with a chance of thunderstorms later. It's raining in Joburg at 13 degrees and it will continue this way well into thunderstorms later with highs of 23. And finally for now in Lagos, the rain continues to come down. 29 degrees at the moment, and that will be the high for today with lows of 23. Okay, so on the day that the Embakasi train is back, it has stalled. And that's not working anymore. So everybody who needed to be on the train, who was on the train, has to get off the train and use public transport. So in the area where there was no traffic, now there's traffic. It's like a magician. Rabbit out of the hat. Train off the road. Traffic on the streets. Okay, Mombasa Road, still a bit of a mess, right in the middle of traffic hour this morning. Coming off of Thika Road, not too painful, so that's a good thing. The construction still continues in industrial area, so we have some cloggers right around there. Road A is looking good from what I'm told, and you can use that as an option, but it take you right round. It's longer, but it's okay. Jogo Road, however, is an absolute mess. As you're trying to get into the CBD today, mess being it's not moving. Very, very, very slow today, a bumper-to-bumper situation. The eastern and southern bypasses, however, are open, longer route, but you won't be stuck in traffic. Are you stuck somewhere, or you find a route that anybody else can use? 40127 is the text number, or tweet us. Spice FM KE.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
28
94.4
minutes
Spice
after 8
FM,
o'clock. The
Nairobi.
conversation continues. This is Spice FM, KTN Home, and also online on www.spicefm.co.ke. Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Getting in touch with us, 0719-012-600 is a phone line, and 40127, that's our SMS number. On the line with us this morning is Dr. Machanda Chibanzi, Secretary General of the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union. Doctors and medical workers are going on strike across the country. And what Dr. Chibanzi was basically explaining to us, they have had negotiations with the county governments. Those have been signed into collective bargaining agreements. Now, the implementation of that is where the rubber meets the road. And very many attempts, according to him, by the medical professionals to have a conversation with the county government to understand what is the challenge that you're facing, how can we then have this resolved, are basically falling on deaf ears. Any attempt to have this issue resolved does not bear fruit. What is the problem then in terms of, are we seeing a situation where the leadership of these counties is boxed into a corner? People are not going to work. People are seeking healthcare services. And so the leadership is basically saying, okay, doctors come, what do you want? All right, sign. Let's have a return to work formula. You guys go back to work. Tutasoti maneno. And then when you go, they forget. They're like, hey, that was a close one. Yeah. At least they're back to work.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yep. And you move on into the next one. Is that a case of is that what's happening, Dr.
Well, we could say that that is part of what's happening. But also, I think from where we sit, because you see, from the union side, if we have signed an agreement, we always review these agreements. So we look at the timeline.
Yeah. We
look at what is due at this time, because one thing we really try to do is to avert all these industrial actions. And so we try to engage, but whereby you've signed an agreement and the other party puts that agreement in a shelf somewhere and then forgets about it, or even doesn't assign someone to constantly address this issue with the other branch officials or the officials of the union, then that's where we get the disconnect. And this is not all county governments. What we're seeing here is a discoordinated, or rather an uncoordinated management of human resources for health. So you have certain counties that really do well, that engage unions, that they make sure everything is put in place in the timelines, and these counties rarely face industrial action. Then you have counties that have become extremely difficult, like what you were saying in the North Rift, that is Nandi, Trans Nzoia. Those are very difficult counties. There are even court cases that have been, we've gone to court on the matters. The courts have given direction, and they still do not take up these matters seriously. So the other issue, of course, is the financing, and we understand that county governments basically have budgets. But you see where an issue, and I'll use an example of maybe a promotion, which is what is causing part of the industrial unrest you're seeing now, that in promotions in most counties were last done in 2015, 2016, when there was an agitation similar to this. After that, it went silent. It's now 5 years down the line. You have specialists, some who've served for 7 years, 8 years, who are being underpaid. So, and I'd like to clarify this, that over the last 5 years, since the 2017 strike, as doctors, we have not gone out in either the county government or the national government to demand a salary increment. The demands are basically around promotions, medical cover, and ensuring that the reductions that have been done on salaries are remitted to these institutions as required, because this now gets to that personal position where if you had a loan, and you're now surviving on the little amount in your salary, and then the loan is not remitted, and then now whatever you're supposed to get as a salary and whatever is in your savings is now even deducted from you, or even your account frozen because you've not paid your loan. That puts someone at a very personal position where financially they are distressed.
True.
And when that is not addressed, then this is what you see, because it gets to a point where people get frustrated. So why am I working if the basics that I'm supposed to take care of me on my own and my welfare are not being addressed?
Is this a case of the political leadership just, using our phrase again, kicking the can down the road? If I look at, for example, the collective bargaining agreement that you were talking about in up north, 2017-2021, that means that this deal was entered to in 2017, right? And this is just before an election. So probably it was easy for whoever was in power at that time to just say, okay, let's enter this. We are going to go into an election. The next government will come in, and if I'm not elected, they'll deal with it.
Well, the CBA that we signed in 2017 was out of the 100 days doctor strike, if you remember that trend, from December 2016 to March 2017.
Yeah.
And then after that, we went into further negotiations and completed the CBA by June. So we signed it in June 2017, and it took effect from 1st July 2017. And even where you've had new political leadership, we've always taken the initiative to first do a courtesy call to the new political leadership in the counties and explain that, okay, fine, you're in office, but as the union would like to work with you, because we have our members in the county government that offer this critical service called healthcare services. And this is the collaborative way we'd like to take. Of course, in the initial phase, you get a lot of that. But because now there's always some historical lapse somewhere in the management, I think even the political leaders who are the ones handling these devolved units at some point also get to a point where I think they get frustrated. Or rather, there's also some level of hostility against healthcare workers. That I'll say with a lot of confidence, because I've noticed.
Is this from the political leaders or even from the other public servants?
Mainly from the political leaders. There's a level of hostility against healthcare workers that has been growing.
Why?
And we live in a country. Thank you. We live in a country where those in leadership don't want to be told what to do. They'd like to do things the way they do. They want the way they want. You see, and these are things that I'll say here because I mean, you get to that point where because you're technical, you understand the issues, and what you're saying is like to avert this. So you simply go there and you have this discussion. But because I'm a political leader, I was elected, you cannot tell me what to do. And that's why I'm saying it falls down to governance on human resources.
Now that you even bring that out, actually, Dr. even the political leadership in these counties accuses the medical professionals of being arrogant. Part of this, of what they say in their pushback is, you know what, these guys are just arrogant. They don't even want to listen. So here I am. I have been elected by the people. I have a reality. I am the one who promised better health provision. I am the one who promised that I'm going to ensure that it happens. Then I come in here and I find the people who are supposed to help me deliver telling me a completely different story, and I don't even want to understand my context or where I'm coming from. Is it also possible that you guys, because you're saying you have the technical expertise, you're the experts in this field, do not want to meet with the reality on the ground?
I wouldn't say that we are arrogant. Of course, I think we've had some of those sentiments. But I'll tell you one thing: what comes here, and it's good that you've asked this question. There's also a lot of power and ego play. You see. And with that, then, you see these standoffs really coming in strong. Because if there's constant dialogue, I believe this, that there's constant dialogue where, fine, you say what you say, let us agree to disagree. Let us sit down and, dialogue is very, very tasking. It's a very hard task because it means you constantly have to go and engage, agree, disagree, back and forth. But eventually, you will get somewhere where you have a level of understanding. But where you feel that I've told you this, and if you don't want to listen or you don't want to hear this, then just go and do what you want. You see, if you dismiss people who are supposed to help you deliver these services, then you're also showing them that you really don't take them as worthy people to work
contempt,
with.
Yes.
Yeah, it's contempt. And out of that, then you look at yourself and say, I'm the one in power. I was elected. I have the instruments of power, so I can fire you. I can do this. With every action, there's a reaction. That's how it's basic as that. Yeah.
Let me ask this question, Daktari. Do you think that our counties actually have the wherewithal? Do they have the money to actually pay the health workers?
When it comes to salaries, I think that's recurrent expenditure that even the national government always pays salaries on time. That's an expenditure that is paid on time and it is budgeted for, and it's one of the expenditures that even when county governments request, they will not be denied money to pay salaries.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something interesting that we've noted in some of the counties, that sometimes even the monies to pay salaries are usually diverted elsewhere and then now brought back. That even processing simple issues like processing salaries, like closure of a payroll. If you look at what national government does, by the 15th, 16th, 17th of the month, they have closed their payrolls. They start processing their salaries, and by the 25th to 30th, they have paid their salaries. In county government, payrolls are closed on the 27th, 28th, 29th, and then they start processing. That takes up to 10 days, so they eventually pay salaries on the 10th, 15th.
Yeah.
You see, and you see, those are simple management issues. You know, if you ask me, because you know that every month you're supposed to pay salary. This is the procedure and the process. You know,
and
so
it happens every month.
Management. Yes, it's simple management issue on that issue of salary. The question that you've asked about salary payment. Yeah, but and that's why we're saying, and I'd like to make it very clear that for us, why we really are pushing and lobbying for this Health Service Commission is because you have one central point that handles all matters health. That it's very easy to engage one point that then you agree and does and goes on with what you've agreed, as opposed to 47 different units that you're battling with others who feel like health is not a priority for me. It is at the end of the day, health is at the mercy of the political leader, who is the governor. So where they feel like this is not really a priority for me, then they will not give it the utmost attention it deserves. And that creates now this level of uncoordinated management of human resources for health.
I hear you talking about the Health Service Commission, which is obviously something that would be centralized to make sure that the operations of some of these things that you're talking about then would become more smooth. So now, taking that into consideration, then did devolution of health work? Because if you're still saying the operations need to be centralized in order to get some of these things done, payment, complaints, etc., then if you want to look at the macro level, then is health as a devolved system really functioning in this country?
Well, that's a question that I think we're not the first country to devolve services. In Europe, in Spain, Italy, and Germany, at some point during the beginning of this, from the year 2000 and the late 90s, they did attempt to decentralize their services, and they faced similar issues, perhaps because of uncoordination, and had to rethink their system of health and recentralize some functions and perhaps leave out some that could be handled at that devolved unit level. These are studies that have been published. Now, if you look at healthcare in the devolved units, it's two-way. You wouldn't really say it has failed fully, because we have, for the first time in certain areas, that resources were not getting there, and as a result, you do not have adequate infrastructure and equipment for the facilities in the counties, because of that centralization, where the marginalized areas really suffered in the previous dispensation. With devolution, some have been able to actually bring up facilities, improve facilities, and actually buy equipment. But at the focus and at the center of all this is, from the infrastructure, medical supplies, equipment side, there is some degree of improvement, and then we would say that there is progress on that. But at the end of the day, you need the human resources to run these facilities. You need the human resources to offer these services that healthcare, that the citizens deserve on health. You still need your human resources for health trained, because one of the pillars of universal health coverage, and it's good that we're talking about this, is a well-trained, well-motivated, and efficient healthcare workforce.
Yeah.
So training is still an issue right now. It is still an issue that county governments and the national government are still battling with, because the other issue, you'll hear counties, and we really agree with them on this, you'll hear counties saying that you will leave the county for 4 to 5 years to go specialize, and for us, we are paying you a salary. And so because of that, then, we are left with a bigger wage bill. The national government wants to, so counties are trying to push the national government to take up this, so that once they train, they're sent out to any area of any part of this country to go and offer the specialized services. But what county governments also are looking at this thing from a face value. So fine, you've let a doctor go study and specialize for 5 years. But where are they coming back? They're coming back to your county to offer specialized services for the time until they retire. So it's basically this money issue and this whole issue of devolving healthcare. Remember in 2013, we had a very big standoff with healthcare workers on the devolution of human resources for health, because it was supposed to be felt, put in place structures and mechanisms in the county to be able to handle healthcare, the healthcare function progressively over 3 years. But what happened? Governors went and actually demanded for the function, and it was given to them, and most of the county governments were unprepared. So if a county government did not sort out these issues in the first 5 years, and then the governor,
them running.
a long way to go.
the new governor comes in and finds issues that were unresolved from the previous administration, and they have to struggle with that, and they have to struggle with also trying to deliver on their agenda.
Would you say that the majority of counties in this country actually are in a position where they have either sorted out the problems or they are in the process of sorting it out? Or would you say that the vast majority don't know what they're doing?
I would say the vast majority are not interested in resolving the issues. And this is because I actually have data with me here that from August on just simple issues, and that show that from the respondents of our members in the counties, where up to, like an instance of the issues I've just said, up to 80%, there is the issue of statutory deductions not being remitted. Up to 75% indicate that they always get their salaries delayed. That is more than half the counties.
Yeah.
On an issue simple as just hold on. Like the COVID allowance that had been issued, had been dispersed to the counties. We had 30% had not paid these monies, and yet the monies had been dispersed to the counties. And that is one issue that you're seeing in Transnzoia, where they've actually down their tools, because that is one of the major issues. So where did the money go?
And yet it was dispersed.
Yes. So that, and it's all about priority, as I say, in the county governments. That the priority is not really on human resources for health. The priority is on the other. I mean, it's easier for a political leader to go and launch and say, I have built this hospital, because the citizens will see that we have a hospital. But if you tell them, I've employed 10 more doctors, to some extent, the electorate do not get to understand this really well, that the 10 more doctors will mean we have less waiting times in the facilities. It means we have access to high-quality healthcare services. So it's the abstract things that count, and not the issues that revolve around human resources.
Listening to you then, Dr. there's a gap here. There's a gap between what the political leaders go and tell the electorate, especially during campaigns, what the political leaders are doing while in office. And this is, first of all, formally and officially wanting to still retain the control of the health function, and then what they're doing practically. When you say that, they don't support the healthcare workers, they're not supporting the healthcare system. So here you are, you've promised people that you're going to ensure that there is provision of healthcare, and yet you are not supporting the people who are going to offer that healthcare service. Here you are, you're still pushing that you want health to remain devolved, and yet you're not supporting it. Explain that. How can there be such a gap?
And I like how you've put it into context, because that just brings the whole picture into context really well. But that is where we are. And so, because you also want, and you see, healthcare is one of those sectors that is now being used to say that if you're saying decentralized human resources for health, you're saying that we are against devolution.
Yeah.
We are not saying we're against devolution. What you're saying is that healthcare, being a critical function, needs one central area to at least try and streamline everything, where there is a command center. And a good example, Eric, I'll use just to answer your question, is our COVID response. If you look at national government COVID response and county government's COVID response, there's a very big disparity. Why is this? Because at the national level, it is one center that, agrees this is how we are moving, and everyone aligns to that. At the county government, yes, you have the Council of Governors, but you have individual governors in each of the counties. And that is why up until now, even that 300-bed capacity, even the main points that had been agreed upon at the summit level on the counties, on the country's response, like testing, availability of testing in the counties, there's still a disparity in the various counties. So how would you explain that? It is simply because you have people whose interests at some point change from what has been agreed upon. And that is, there's nothing much you can do, because at the end of the day, the county governments also at some point declare that we have some level of autonomy. And the governor can decide that, I will not do this now, I will do this. And that is why it's you look at that and you look at how healthcare is handled in the country. This uncoordination now is a threat to even this universal health coverage agenda. Because for UHC to work, it would mean that we all are on the same page and all are moving in the same direction. No one has interests elsewhere that will sabotage this agenda.
How is this all going to work, Dr. Because it looks, it is clear that it is something that requires a solution, right? Over and over and over again, this has been the case. And we are saying now that it has an adverse effect on how health services are delivered in this country. It has an adverse effect then on bringing in new projects that have to do with health. You've talked about the UHC, for example. And if that cannot be done because of these rudimentary problems that are being faced, so do you see a time when these issues can be sorted out so that you then have a robust health sector in this country?
Yes, and we've given these through our submissions to various bodies, including even this PBI process when we're talking about health sector reforms. The first thing is to appreciate that we have primary level of healthcare, then we have tertiary level of healthcare. So our solution and what we see can work is, one, let county governments handle the primary level of health, that is level 1 and level 2 facilities, and then let the specialized and tertiary healthcare services be handled at a central level. That way you have simply just been able to give better delineation of the services and who is responsible. And then thirdly, before devolution is used to have healthcare facilities having autonomy to spend what they rate from the revenue they get from patients. This is where the facility improvement fund, FIF. So in the devolved system of governance, where the facilities of tertiary services have to take money into a central account from the county revenue fund, and then the county revenue fund and the county government is supposed to now pull these resources and try to find to come back to the healthcare facility.
Dr. Unfortunately, something has happened to your line. We are not able to hear you well right now. I think there's something happened to the line. It's about time also to say goodbye to our audience on KTN Home at 8 minutes to 9 o'clock. Join us again tomorrow morning on KTN 7 to 9. But this conversation happens every morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Spice FM, which is on 94.4 in Nairobi. If you're in Malindi, it's 97.7, Nyeri 90.9, 96.7 in Eldoret, Nakuru 96.0, and 102.5 in Kisumu, while Mombasa it's 87.9. We also live stream this show audio-visual on our social media handles, Spice FM KE. We're on Facebook, we're live streaming on Twitter, and we are also live streaming the show on YouTube, as well as our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. Let's take a quick break and say goodbye to our audience on KTN Home, hoping that you'll join us again tomorrow morning. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room, with CT Muga, Nduoko, and Eric Latif.
Spice FM, Nyeri. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
6 minutes to 9. We still have on the line Dr. Machanda Chibanzi as we come to conclude this conversation. Dr. Harry, you are talking about the things that need to happen. But before we let you go, let's just seek your comment on the issue of the Cuban doctors. There's a story in The Nation today that talks about how much the government has been paying to the Cuban doctors every month. Every doctor getting about 100,000 shillings per month, and then money also being paid to the Cuban government, plus the doctor is receiving a furnished apartment, a cooker, electricity, washing machine, internet, water, kitchen appliances, and cooking gas. And some of the pushback that there was from the local medical workers was, why are we bringing these doctors? And yet we have very many doctors in the country who've been trained who are not being absorbed into the workforce. What's your reaction to this?
Yeah, so I like the fact that you highlighted what the perks the Cuban gets apart from the salary, all those issues, and just to see that one, the collective bargaining agreements actually had those perks that are being offered to the Cubans. So you were seeing already that the implementation of it was taken to the Cuban doctors and was being given to the Kenyan doctors. Secondly, is that yes, we do have unemployed Kenyan doctors, quite a very big number that are supposed to that are actually supposed to be in the workforce because you have an acute shortage of healthcare personnel. So essentially, what we're saying is that now we're seeing discrimination of our own doctors, and the others are getting better attention. So if we are to let the Kenyan doctor feel valued the same way the Cuban doctor is valued, if we do that, we will have less of this. These are some of the things that are fueling some of these, because it's very painful that you negotiated something, and that whatever negotiation is given to someone else, and you're left hanging.
Well, let's hope that we're going to get some more clarity on this issue going forward. Dr. Machanda Chibanzi, thank you very much for speaking to us today. And, just always remember, like you've said many times, that as you are agitating for better pay, as you're taking industrial action, then your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, your cousin is the one who's going to seek healthcare, and they're not able to get it.
I totally agree with you, Eric. And it's a very painful decision to take these actions, but we hope that they will be addressed and we get this sense of normalcy in the sector.
Asante. Thank you very much and have a good day. Unfortunately, we had a problem with the line towards the tail end of this conversation. Does it address for you, CT? Does it now shed a better picture of what is ailing the health sector?
It doesn't shed light, it sheds a floodlight. Because you certainly...
Amulika mwizi in a market.
Yes, exactly, because even crevices, places that you couldn't have seen now, you suddenly... What you realize, this thing is the problem is much bigger than you may think. And it's systemic. It's not something that, it's not a flash in the pan situation which can be resolved overnight. No. But again, I think the debate that we ought to be having on this is, should we reverse this particular devolution and centralize healthcare system in the country? Because it's a discussion worth having.
It seems that that's what the call is.
Because the counties clearly don't seem to be able to manage healthcare.
Whether we're talking about looking at the welfare of health workers, whether you're talking about their salaries and insurance and
provision
payment, provision of healthcare on a county level, on a national level, whether you're look at the mess that we are seeing now with the MES scandal, looking at something like that whereby you're even getting material that you're never going to even use at the county level. So many things that would then lend to that idea that, all right, are you inherently asking that devolution be recalled from the health sector?
It should. It should be considered.
I agree
seriously.
with you, but I also see I don't see a solution to what has been what is actually causing the current agitation. I don't see how the national government having the goodwill better than the county governments. It's just that now in the county governments, we're talking about the various county governments, so you can see it in pockets. But when it comes to national level, it is likely to be the same. The same way we see teachers constantly going on strike, or the university staff union constantly going on strike. Why? Because they've entered into a collective bargaining agreement and not implemented. Before devolution, doctors had already started going on strike with the national government.
Oh, they've been going on strike for the longest time possible. You see, what, in my opinion, seems to be the issue here, it's the national government that gives the county governments money. So, if instead of shifting blame to 47 units, let it be one.
Let's centralize the blame.
Yes, let's centralize the blame.
While you centralize
Shine
everything
a
else.
spotlight on this one
Yes.
that is not
Yes.
performing its function.
Yes.
I agree with you. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Keep it right here. In the next hour, we come back and ask ourselves, how many questions are we going to ask ourselves? So, the mess in the healthcare system, the mess in the MES report, the mess in the Senate. Which way forward? We'll be discussing that MES report in the next hour. Good morning. It's now 9 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Traffic.
40127 is the SMS number that you can get to us when you might be stuck anywhere on the roads today. We're still looking at some traffic on Mombasa Road today. We're also looking at some coming off of Thika Road, but it's not too bad off Thika Road right now. Getting into the CBD should just be fine. Mombasa Road still looking like a clog up in most areas, and we know that this is again because of the construction in those parts. Okay, all right, so getting out of traffic hours soon enough. The eastern and southern bypass is also not providing us with too much in terms of drama. Joga Road is still a mess, guys, and we know that because the commuter train is not working this morning, even when it was reintroduced to today, that we'll see heightened levels of traffic around Bakassi, around Donholm, around Jogo Road, and this is happening as we speak. Not to forget, 40127 is the SMS line. You can talk to us there if you get stuck anywhere or you find an alternate route, let us know. Tweet us as well, Spice of MKE.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your
2.5
day.
minutes after 9 o'clock on this first day of October 2020. Welcome to the final hour of The Situation Room. Remember, you can join us in the conversations by calling 0719-012-600 or texting us 40127, or also just posting your comment or question on Twitter, on Instagram, or on Facebook, Spice of MKE, on either of those. So what is it that has happened in the Senate? The Senate went into some late votes, and the senators basically looked at the report that had been prepared by this special committee that had been set up to investigate the managed equipment service, which was 63 billion shillings worth. Came up with a report, and they said this was a criminal enterprise with no mincing of any words. But then they failed to go to the extent that the fellow senators would have wanted to see, which is say exactly who is responsible. Name names and say, this is the person who's responsible. This person should be indicted, either investigated further or even prosecuted, or even going as far as saying this company should be prosecuted or even blacklisted from dealing with the government. The report did not go to that extent. So senators, a section of senators ganged up in protest and said that, unless we are allowed to amend this so that we can insert the names that have been mentioned in other parts of this report, we insert them in the recommendations of the report, because this is what is actionable. If we don't do that, then let's just reject this report in total. Let's say we go back to the drawing board. The senators who rejected these, Senators Nderitu Kenywa of Laikipia, Ledama Olekina of Narok, James Orengo of Siaya, Fred Auta of Kisumu, Samuel Pogisio of West Pokot, Sakaja Johnson of Nairobi, Mithika Linturi of Meru, Anwar Loitiptip of Lamu, Stuart Madzai of Kilifi, Mandera's Mohamud Mohamed, Michael Mbito of Trans Nzoia, Philip Mbaye of Kajiado, Elgeo Marquez Kipchumba Murkomen, Mutula Kilonzo Jr. of Makueni, Jones Mwaruma of Taita Taveta, and Mohamed Faki of Mombasa all voted no to this report. We are not going to adopt this report as presented, because really it doesn't make any sense. Which, when we were discussing this yesterday and earlier today, we're saying, look, it raises the issue of spending money, spending time, summoning people to stop doing what they're supposed to be doing, what they're employed to do, to come before the Senate so that you can investigate this matter. Even asking for extension of the time so that you can even go and lock yourselves up in a specific hotel, which is paid for by the taxpayer.
Right.
You come up with a report, and then this report does not have the teeth to bite. It's all bark, no bite. What is the point? And it's not the first time we see these kind of reports. We see these kind of reports all the time. We see, task forces that are set up to investigate a certain matter. Oh, there's a helicopter crash in Kabiku Forest in Ngong that has killed the interior minister, his assistant, and several civil servants. An investigation is conducted. It is not conclusive. So what happened? We have the same Anglo. Many of these reports not conclusive on saying this is what happened and these are the answers and these are the people who ought to give us the answers.
Well, I definitely think that there should be a demanding for answers, because it doesn't take anything to its logical conclusion. All you've done basically is that you've brought everybody to come around, hold hands, and have a storytelling moment. That's it. And then you take what you've heard orally and you put it on paper, and then you hand it over to somebody, and it starts collecting dust on some shelf somewhere. That's all you've done. All right. So was there a question mark on whether money was used illegally? There's a question mark. Are you going to bring anybody to book? No, not really. We've just told you what has happened. We've brought all these individuals here. They've sat behind the microphone. They've told us what happened. Somebody denied signing something. Somebody else was coerced into signing something. Somebody else talks about how they were there or not there. And then it's all put down on paper. And that's it.
395 pages of the report.
That's it.
All right.
And then they print several copies of the same, and it's handed out to a number of individuals. Perhaps those who then have something to do with it don't even read it. They look through the table of contents. They say, okay, that was done. Finish. Nobody's asking questions beyond that, because that is the lifeline of the millions of reports that you've seen having been done whenever an investigation is asked to be carried out. A report is done, it sits on a shelf somewhere. The people who wrote it probably don't even remember that they put it together, and then it's done. Money came, lost. Nobody really asks any questions about it anymore. Report is done, it's put, it's finished.
There's a report.
Then what was the point? You would have just said, okay, there was the MES scandal. Money we couldn't find all of it, or at least some of it was paid. Don't tell us all these other things about saying there needs to be an investigation. You'd rather not do it at all. The one who said something that's worth doing is worth being done right, then do it right. And say that if somebody was at fault, that you lost these huge amounts of money, bring these people to book, name them. I am in 100% agreement. Whether there were people who signed no because they wanted to join the sycophancy, or those who said no because they actually see merit in naming these individuals, all of them.
Or those who say no because, it's a good way of just kicking the can down the road and making sure that nothing happens.
Nothing happens to these, because now in another
Killing
6 months, if they bring this special ad hoc committee upon the ad hoc committee which already exists, they're going to do the same thing, and it's just going to be another 6 months of asking questions, and yet, it's painful to even think about it.
You know that thinking, if you look at it, look at the issue of the 2/3 gender rule. the thinking behind it. We were told here by two very eminent members of parliament how on one occasion there were, I think, was it 6 people just shy of getting the two-third. It's like a goal. You either score or you don't. Again, it's like pregnancy. You can't be a bit pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not. It's not really complicated. Okay. By the same token, if you then have a situation where we have lawmakers just pushing the can down, it's like a game. Comes up, let's talk about this, Then a legal process now comes into force. It will look, if you can't do this according to our laws, this is what should happen. We are going to devolve parliament. Then suddenly, what do you mean?
How?
Precisely. How can you go through a process that produces 300 and how many pages?
95. 395.
400 pages of document. And in all those 400, you don't give us specific details of the individuals involved, because there are individuals involved. You don't tell us specifically what, given the information you have, should be done specifically by what agency and within what space of time. All these things are within your purview.
The report, the table of contents, you know what it consisted of? There was the executive summary, of course,
Usually,
introduction, objectives, terms of reference, scope of work and limitation, structure of the report, key findings, managerial responsibility, conclusion and recommendations. So now you had the background, scope of work, etc. The detailed findings now were budget management for COVID-19 related expenditures, procurement. No, sorry, I'm reading something totally different here.
It's all right. It sounds good.
I'm reading something totally
Sounds
different.
good.
As you look for the other one, can I just look at the chapter 6 of this report is committee findings and final recommendations, and then it's subdivided into various sectors. So first of all, the findings and recommendations on the MES project.
That's
The
the one.
committee in its findings noted the Managed Equipment Services project was a public interest project that was intended to benefit the public. In fact, the committee has established that the MES project appears to have been conceived like a criminal enterprise shrouded in opaque procurement processes and aimed at benefiting a few commercial interests.
Okay.
What is the recommendation? Moving forward, the committee recommends that the money meant for this project should be deposited to the County Revenue Fund as required by the Constitution. All right? Second part of the observation and recommendation, procurement matters. The committee has established that the entire procurement process in the MES project, from the conceptualization to implementation, is shrouded with secrecy and smells of irregularities and illegalities. What is the recommendation? The committee therefore recommends that all public officers found culpable of irregularities and illegalities committed in the furtherance of the adverse commercial interests which were at the expense of the people of Kenya be prosecuted and be barred from holding office. It has just said all public officers found culpable. Who is finding them culpable?
And the process
are
of
these all-
of finding them culpable. The
Who are these
process,
public
by the
officers?
way.
Furthermore, the committee recommends that all private entities and persons found culpable of participating in these illegal acts in the procurement and implementation be barred from doing any business with both levels of government.
Fat chance.
Has not said who. All private entities found culpable. Have you found any of them culpable? That is a question that is being asked. So this whole 390 pages prior to this, have you found any of them
If
culpable?
you're talking about it, as we said earlier on, you cannot have a criminal enterprise that are criminals.
Yeah, exactly.
So who are these criminals?
The other bit of these findings, forensic audit. They're saying the Office of the Auditor General should undertake this forensic audit as a priority and report back to the Senate within 6 months from the date of resolution of the Senate on this report. 6 months from if they had voted yes yesterday, 6 months, and then now the Auditor General brings a report, blah, 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 blah. Further investigations by relevant agencies. The committee recommends the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission to investigate these matters and take appropriate action within 90 days. The committee implores all state officers, public officers, and government agencies, whatever the importance or urgency of an undertaking, constitutional principles must be observed. Blah, 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 blah. Specific observations and recommendations. Breach of the Constitution. So they came up with specific long stories. Basically, this whole report has not named anyone and said, so-and-so should be investigated for their role in this and that. This office should be investigated. This company should be investigated. This law firm should be investigated. Nothing. It's just, we find that anyone found culpable, you could have said that from the very beginning. Anyone found culpable should be prosecuted.
Why are they telling us what we know? Of course, if you're found culpable, you should be prosecuted. So, the thing that I find completely flabbergasting is how it is that a report of this nature can actually be delivered, and some people sit somewhere and they think they've actually done a good job.
Mm-hmm.
As in, they've completed their mandate.
Yeah, as far as they're
to
concerned,
satisfactory levels.
Them they feel, it's a good job. What exactly have you done? If you look at something like the Ndungu report named names. Companies. There was no doubting, mentioned this. Same. When you talk about WikiLeaks and the report, names are mentioned.
Yep.
Conversations are quoted. So, when you have a report like this, you then have to ask, did you even need to have this report in the first place?
So are these many committees? Because, it's either a committee or a task force, ad hoc.
The committees actually exist. By the way, the committees already exist.
So these individuals who form these committees.
The committees exist.
Yeah, sure. No. But now, when you had the MES scandal, now the committee that went into this whole investigation of the report was constituted as the result of this, right? There were findings.
It wasn't the normal committees that did
No. It wasn't a standing committee. It was
special
committee after they realized there were some abnormalities, right?
Yep.
So committee instituted to go into finding what exactly went wrong. These individuals who form these committees, because they all seem to operate the same. We don't know if they go to some night school and have, a session when everybody else is asleep, because it would appear that they operate in the same fashion. A report is done, it's done, we're done. Nothing else comes out of that. So is there some fear that they all harbor when it comes to then naming
what fear?
These individuals?
What
or
fear?
Is it that they have some individuals on these committees then who are involved in the process? What is it? Because this question of naming names didn't come with the completion of the report. It started even while the investigations continued and the submissions were being made to the health committee. It was going on at that point. They were still asking who, because if you say somebody signed, who? Somebody gave their who?
Do ask yourself
so
this
is it
simple
fear?
question.
Is it because of vested interest? What's the problem?
Ask yourself this simple question. Forgive me for answering your question, but do you think that perpetrators of some of these criminal activities do not know these processes, that when this happened, this is what is bound to take place? Because this is government.
Yeah.
When it moves from here, there will be this. When it moves here, until it gets to the Senate or until it gets to
Till the final
National
domino
Assembly,
falls.
they know.
Yep.
So, you plan for this long before it even happens.
Yeah. Start an investigation.
It reminds me of a gentleman.
And we go. Before
Please.
you tell us about the gentleman,
Yes.
can we hear from the gentleman called Ed Getonga calling in from Nyeri? Good morning, gentleman.
Hey, morning. How are you guys, huh?
Salama kabisa.
It's been long, huh?
It's been a while.
Anyway, what's the need of having a dog and chaining it?
Good question.
Because, honestly speaking, okay, for example, Eric, there's a song by Sarabi, Sharia. There's a part they usually say that mwizi wa kuku anashikwa, but for someone else, you have to form a commission
Yep.
to investigate. I really wonder what commission someone like Dennis Okari usually has to input to find out the certain companies. I don't want to name them.
Yep.
But now here's the thing, huh? It's been it's like a hamster on a wheel, okay? It always spins and spins and spins. It's been the story all over. Actually, let me tell you, to be quite more specific, the only time the parliament, both assemblies that is, the only time that they do something that makes sense is when there is an increment in salaries or something that has to benefit them.
It's the only time that there will be an actual output.
Exactly. Because I really feel to wonder, I mean, it's even stipulated in the Constitution. Like, okay, when someone does this, this should be done. So we already know. Already tunajua kwamba if you steal, you should be answerable.
Yeah.
So why the hell spend hours in the assembly?
Weeks.
Months.
Alafu unakuja unatuambia the same BS.
Yeah. Anyone who was culpable should.
Didn't I know that? There's someone who said this, and actually,
lays an egg.
Yeah.
sorry, there's someone who told me this. You saw the skirmishes, the little incidents that were happening in Nakuru, Matatu guys versus the governor, you know? There's someone who told me, guys are staying woke. But, as I usually say, we need a whole sanitization of the political class and the mentality of Kenyans. So that, because honestly speaking, I can tell you this, Eric, beyond any reasonable doubt, I can tell you this.
Yeah.
There is nothing that is going to happen. And I mean nothing. Bold, capitalized, and underlined.
In red.
Yes, nothing is going to happen, PT. I'm going to give it happen. And this is not the only scandal. Expect many other more. And it's still going to be the same hamster on the wheel process.
Moving up and down. Thank you very much, Ed.
Moving up and down.
Asante sana.
Have a good day, guys.
You
Cheers,
too.
Thanks, Ed.
20 minutes after 9, we also want to ask you, the conversation we're having is now calling on citizens to demand proper reports to come out of investigations, not just coming to say, this is what happened, and therefore we condemn in the strongest terms possible, with no prevarication, and for avoidance of doubt, and not dithering or tethering.
Without fear
Without
of
fear or favor. All these things, and then nothing comes out of it. Psh.
All things being equal.
20 minutes after 9, let's take a look at the weather.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather with Spice FM.
Mostly cloudy conditions in Nairobi this morning at 18 degrees. We'll see highs of 26 today and lows of 14. Taking a look then into Nyeri, where it's 16 degrees and mostly cloudy as well. Highs of 24 today. 16 degrees and mostly cloudy in Nakuru. 24 degrees the high and a chance of rains later on. 14 degrees and mostly cloudy in Eldoret. Thunderstorms are in the forecast for today. In Kisumu, it's partly cloudy at 22 degrees. Highs of 27 and rainy conditions expected later. Mostly cloudy in Kakamega at 19 degrees, highs of 24 and lows of 14 with showers expected later on through the day. 25 degrees, or rather 27 degrees at the moment in Mombasa and mostly cloudy. Looking like rain later, highs of 28 and lows of 24. Malindi, expect some rain later, highs of 25, 28 and lows of 25. Today, Kampala is mostly cloudy at 20, highs of 24 with thunderstorms in the forecast. Dar es Salaam at 26 degrees is mostly cloudy. Thunderstorms look like they're beckoning, highs of 29 and lows of 23. Joburg continues with light rain this morning and mostly cloudy conditions through the day. highs of 23 and lows of 13. Lagos continues to pound down the rain. It's partly cloudy at the moment, but the rains will come back to highs of 30. In Beijing, it's mostly sunny at 21, highs of 22 as Thursday comes to an end in the eastern part of the world. It's cloudy in London at 12 degrees, highs of 15 and lows of 10, and the rains will come back later. Paris also continues to experience light rain showers at 14. Highs will be 17 today and lows of 11. It's finally Thursday in New York, and it's clear skies at 17 degrees, highs of 24 and lows of 14.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM,
24 minutes
Nairobi.
after 9, the conversation continues. 0719-012-600 or SMS 40127. What should Kenyans do to demand accountability from parliamentary investigations? We have seen this one report, 395 pages. Work taken by this special committee that was set up by the Senate to go and investigate the mess that is the Managed Equipment Service, came up with a scathing report that says this was in fact a criminal enterprise. And then in the end it says everybody who is found culpable should then be prosecuted. In fact, the companies that are then also found culpable should not be allowed to work in this republic. In fact, the Auditor General should investigate. So what were you doing investigating all this? When you bring in a report that is not does not have concrete recommendations and saying so and so we have found so and so to be culpable, so and so should be investigated for their role. You know, you can just pass this on to those agencies of government that have the power, the wherewithal, the better understanding of investigations. Tell them, investigate C.T. Muga for the role that he played, investigate the company called Eric Lati for the role that they played, investigate Nduoko for the role that she played.
Eric, you know, when they conduct these investigations, they do have the mandate and the power to call in other government officials who can actually lend to what they're doing.
Yeah.
You know, in case you need some help.
Yes, exactly. People who, these very specific institutions.
You can call the ESCC.
You can call the
Auditor General.
You can call the asset recovery. You can call all these people to beef up so that by the time you
That's why they're there partially.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that by the time you actually make your report, this isn't guesswork. You even have facts to support what it is you're saying. Now, you can't have all this information and then you give us some wishy, genuinely washy conclusion that is soaked in water and can't really help you. One, even if you wanted to move, you're not sure whether you should move. I mean, if you're in the middle of the ocean, you can't see any land. Do you know whether you can move left? Do you know even where left is and where right is?
But you just jump
And the
in and start
recommendation
paddling
is
about.
you should find land.
Yes. And the land is south. And you're saying, okay, south is
No, they
south.
don't even say land is south.
But you
We
just jump in.
recommend that you take all effort to find land.
You know, this is a game.
There you shall find
this is a
fresh
game
drinking
that
water.
Unfortunately, if we didn't have government agencies or commissions that had produced results that you can look at and say, we even know what to do, you even know who to look for, because names have been mentioned in this same country. We've had that.
Look, answers have been found for even more complicated things when they wanted to. As you're saying, investigations have been done, people have been found culpable, and then been charged in court and prosecuted thereafter. So this one is not going to be something major that these agencies that you're talking about then would not be able to do. So like you said, when you get, what did you call it? Wishy yet washy.
Yes.
Thing like this, and then you're trying to tell people that, okay. So you're using very long, you're going to Mombasa Road, but you decide, let me go to
Let's
Nakuru
start
and come back.
by going to Nakuru first.
Yes, but we're going.
But we're actually going, Mombasa Road is actually our destination.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, the question you then ask is, actually, what sort of idiots do these people think we are?
That's it. And you can tell them anything after all. They'll just swallow because they've swallowed before, no?
No, and then you'll go bragging. You know, we investigated this and we found. And in fact, indeed, we found that this was a criminal enterprise. And our report
Stated
said
as
as
much.
much. We did not even edit the wordings, the strong wording of our report.
Do you not
We
see
said this was conceived with criminal intents and it was executed by criminals. Now,
it's funny, but that's actually what they say.
but that's exactly what Fatma Dulo, Wetangula, and the other members of this committee, that's what they've said.
This crime was committed by criminals.
It was committed by criminals.
This egg was laid by a bird.
Not known to fly very often, and it's actually domestic in nature. It's called a hen. Now,
Oh no!
so it's that egg you see over there.
It's not funny. It's a shame. It's a shame, especially when we're talking about millions of shillings that could have been. Because I always have to bring it back here, because you can look at it. Oh, scandal, drama, but millions of shillings that were used that is a road to nowhere. Whereas you have people suffering, dying on a daily basis from the diseases that these machines were in essence supposed to help them live a little bit longer on.
Look,
This is what we're talking about. And then we're coming and pussyfooting around issues here. Somebody was culpable. Somebody made a decision somewhere. Somebody pocketed money somewhere. Somebody did something that was not right, that resulted in the death of other people. Until and unless we're able to liken the thievery of public funds to the death of individuals in this country, these things that we're talking about here, that's why you have people so comfortable talking about look for dry land when all you're surrounded by is water.
By the way, the Star newspaper this week showed us the way forward. Headline, former AG signed, gave authority. Headline. Now, if you are asking who played what role, there you
Start
are.
there.
Ask him. Because previous information that we had was he didn't play a role. This thing happened behind his back.
You didn't know what was going on.
No, it happened when he wasn't looking. And then the Star not only writes the article, but gives details of how it
It
is.
was actually done.
Precisely. Now, we also discussed this earlier in the week, and we said it isn't that he planned it, but because he's the AG, the buck stops with him. If the underlings who were supposed to have prepared this document and gave it to him, and there were things that he didn't read, well, he didn't read it. But then those underlings should be mentioned. When such documents are prepared, there are people who are good at writing such contracts. Who are the people who wrote this contract? What were the instructions that they were given? Okay. Who else was involved? Was it just this one person? Who else in the Ministry of Health signed it? Meaning, let the individuals be known. Again, in the media the previous week, the former PS in that particular ministry, who is now PS Lands, was named very, very specifically. Now, if the newspapers are coming out and they get their reports from reports such as the one that has been tabled, what about if you are the one who is actually doing this investigation? Surely the people you call in will be able to tell you and give you the nitty-gritty and the details that you seek. Because they know. It's not as though everyone who was involved in the MAS suddenly died of influenza and so we can't find them. They didn't. When these things were happening, there was no COVID. Okay? And the dead bodies in this case are the equipment that nobody has used. Right now, you can't use them even if you want to use them.
In boxes.
You can't use them. Remember, it's the same story with, do you remember those mobile clinics? Now, this was ironical, almost the point of being comical, that they were actually transported and then taken to Madare, which we know is a psychiatric facility.
The container clinics.
Yes, exactly. So you wonder, okay, were they taking them there to examine them? Were they taking them there to do what? You don't hear the stories of where they were deployed in detail, what happened to them. Now, unfortunately, when you come from a background where you are spoiled for choice as to which scandal to talk about.
As in?
Yes, you're spoiled for choice, really. When people who are supposed to help us unravel these things and bring the perpetrators to book play the sort of games that these individuals are playing, then you can only tell the president, please dissolve this parliament. Just let these individuals go home, and if they're popular enough, wherever they come from, to make a comeback, let them make a comeback. But as of now, it is evidently clear that they do not seem to understand that they're servants of the people of this country. They don't. They think they're the lords of the people of this country.
So then what should happen? First of all, to this report, does it just mean the end of that? Does it mean that, all that work that was done, all the money that was spent in facilitating this committee to conduct its investigations, everything has gone to waste?
No. I'm sure they'll form another committee.
And spend more money.
Yes,
Pana.
to investigate the same thing.
Let's just take a break for now. 27 minutes to 10. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Call in now, 0719-012-600 or also 40127. Or you can post your comment on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, Spice FM KE. Let's look at what's happening on the roads. This conversation continues. How can Kenyans demand accountability from parliamentary investigations like this one by the Senate Special Committee that was investigating the MES, which has been rejected by the Senate?
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru. Traffic.
Yikes, you close your eyes on Thika Road and then in a few minutes, things have gone jam, literally. So, the service lane from Ruaraka, Nisembe is what they're saying. So, you want to use the highway. It's going to go slow, but you want to use that. There was an accident involving a pickup and a motorcycle at the Kawa West Junction just before the exit bypass. So, unfortunately, that's somebody who was injured badly. And that is also affecting traffic then coming down. Let's head out to Mombasa, where somebody says, Kajam Kidogo Dogo. Huh? Kidogo headed towards Bombolulu. So today Swahili's coming in the traffic. Get it? Okay. Yeah? All right. So there's a little bit of jam here and there, pockets of traffic around the different cities. We'll take a look and at that through the day, but for now it looks like it's getting better and better. Slightly still moving a little bit slow on Mombasa Road, but it's likely to be that way throughout today. Yes. Not to forget, 40127 is the SMS number, or tweet us on Spice of MKE through the day. You're stuck somewhere, an alternate could be found.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
This matter was investigated by an ad committee of the Senate, which was chaired by Isiolo Senator Fatma Dulo. And what she was asking her fellow legislators in the House is not to reject this report. She warned that rejecting the report would end the probe into the alleged misappropriations of taxpayers' billions at Afya House. If you kill this report, she said, this will indict this House. Kenyans were really waiting for this report. And if it's killed today, this is the end of MES.
I think she's got it wrong. Kenyans were not waiting for the report. Kenyans were waiting for who was responsible for this mess. That's what Kenyans are waiting for. Kenyans have been given reports on end for years. Kenyans were not waiting for a report. Kenyans wanted to know who was responsible for the mess you see at the mess. That's what Kenyans... She's got it all wrong, unfortunately. She's got it twisted here. Sorry.
A member of the committee is Kitui Senator Eno Kwambua, who said MES is a situation where the equipment that we have today in our hospital does not belong to us. The only thing that we are paying for in those hospitals is the service that we are getting from the equipment. And he is also urging the other senators, let's vote for this report. Let's not reject the report. But the other senators said, no. What you've presented to us here does not meet the threshold of what a report should be telling us. A report should have concrete recommendations. This one does not have concrete recommendations. So having reached this point where you have been formed by the Senate, they have voted to constitute an ad hoc committee, and they gave you the authority and the mandate to go and investigate this matter, and then you come back with a report, and they look at the report that you've given and they say, no. You have not passed this test. should we then now take administrative action against this ad hoc committee and say, for example, how much money was expended during the hearings and the sittings of this ad hoc committee? Should the senators in this committee then be told, you know what, refund that money, just so that in future, if you're put in an ad hoc committee, ensure that you meet
Do you know why I laugh?
the expectations.
I'm reminded of a gentleman whom, well, I happen to know him. His people had called him to lead them, and he heeded the call and vied for the seat of Member of Parliament. And after spending oodles and oodles of money, and the results came in, the results and the money somehow didn't resonate.
Output did not match input.
No, it didn't. So this man, I think, looked at this thing and decided to have a very practical perspective of this. And he went back to all the people who were part of his committee, said, ask them to give him back his money.
I gave you money to get me votes.
There are no results. My money. Bring.
Yes. Accountability.
Yes. I want my money.
It's accountability.
Yes.
I mean, you cannot just, be told, go and do this, and then you come back and you haven't done it, and you're told, okay, it's okay.
At the time I found it funny, but over time I realized that guy had the right idea. How can these people take your money and then not deliver what you give them money for? Let them refund clause.
Return the money.
Yes.
Return the money. The members of this committee, if your fellow, the whole Senate, the whole House of the Senate has looked at your report, and they have weighed it, and they have found that this report is wanting, and they have said, no, we reject this report, what then should happen? Accountability, for accountability's sake. You should go back and refund this money.
Eric, can we consider for a second, perhaps, much as we've lambasted the senators, that perhaps shooting it down was the best thing that they could have done?
Well, shooting it down was the best thing they could have done. Was this the best report that was produced by their fellow senators?
They could have done a better job.
That's the thing.
They could have done a better job from the beginning. And that's why I said it seemed like they just wanted to gloss over issues. Because, look, it sounds like something that you want to talk about that only exists in outer space, right? Where there's maybe not really that much order and such. But these are individuals who know what's going on. By the time somebody can publicly say that there's vested interest somewhere, or my colleagues have been compromised, or my colleagues have, then it wouldn't surprise you that a report like this has come out. Because it's neither here nor there. It's vague for all intents. It is vague, it's ambiguous, it's cloudy. You've told us what has happened, but then you've not told us who has done it. You've told us who may have signed here or there. You've not told us who that signature belongs to, which is what people essentially want to know. So somebody should have to be responsible for their actions. It just makes management, accountability have to be things that walk hand in hand. You manage something and then you don't want to be held accountable for it. And those then who've been asked to investigate you also don't make you accountable for it because they don't even bother to tell us who it was. Why? How then will you right the wrong? How then will you guarantee the future to say that something like this will not happen again? You've not. You've just basically said, okay, we've accepted it as it is. The report could have been done 1,000 times better. The information therein could have been more authentic. It wasn't. It wasn't.
The body of the report actually goes ahead and mentions a lot. It says, we summoned so this is what we established, that this was what happened. But the body of the report is one thing. The recommendations of the report is the action point. Now, if the recommendation of the report, which is the action point, does not say, having found out that Eric Latif did this, and the other, we therefore recommend that action be taken against Eric Latif. If you don't do that, then just saying, having looked at everything, we recommend that anybody who was in that room should be investigated or should be prosecuted. You have not really produced the report. All you've done is you have played around. You have, and this committee, just like Mutula Kilonzo Jr. has said, this committee has senior lawyers. These senior lawyers really know, when a report says this and the other, they know what they are implying. When this committee was seeking extension of time so that it can complete its work and bring a solid and concrete report, and then it brings a solid and concrete report which has very heavy words at the top, and the bottom is, now that the sun has risen, we urge that everybody sits under a tree so that they in the shade.
Because trees have shade.
Because trees
especially
have
the
shade.
tree has leaves.
Yeah.
Profound.
Deep stuff.
Profound. Really profound.
Those are your leaders.
Some of these people should just be investigated. The Senate, the committee
Even
itself.
the people who wrote the committee themselves. That's what I'm asking. Is it that they're afraid, or they have vested interest, or they're part of this whole kit and caboodle? They're part of it as well. Because now it doesn't explain. It doesn't give an explanation that's sound. Apart from that, you're part of this whole thing. That's why you've given us this.
They are
kind
part of the
rubbish.
caboodle.
Yeah. Part of this rubbish. It's rubbish.
Let's hear from Lydia in Parklands. Good morning, Lydia.
Good morning. Thank you for your important program. I also wanted to contribute to say that all those MPs who keep walking out to kill the votes and parliament quorum, or even the MCAs, they should never be allowed to walk in again. They should just be registered that they are walkouts all the time. And they should never ever stand for elections again. They should never be qualified for that. Even the MCAs keep yelling, shouting. They don't want the speaker to speak. This should not be allowed. This rudeness or ignorance should not be allowed.
Yep.
Thank you, Spice FM.
Thank you very much, Lydia. 0719-012-600 or 40127 on SMS. Let us know what you think. The committee had many recommendations. EACC and DCI investigate the circumstances surrounding the awarding and implementation of the contracts. All public officers found culpable of irregularities and illegalities committed in this commercial interest, in the furtherance of the adverse commercial interest, which were the expense of the people, should be barred from holding office. All private entities should be barred from conducting business in the country. The Office of the Auditor General should investigate. That is it.
Okay.
Not anybody in particular being mentioned, being cited, and being said, this is the person who is responsible. This is where our money went, and therefore this person should be investigated. And yet, in their own report, they have said, well, in fact, we have found out that this thing is was theft of public money.
You know, one of the things that perhaps you can never actually overstate is the shoddy way in which leaders treat the citizenry. This is something which is of importance. MES was supposed to solve very many of our medical problems. 63 billion shillings is a lot of money by any standards.
Yeah.
Now, when that amount of money is spent and all we hear, it's not empty complaints, but genuine complaints, equipment that has never been used, equipment that is inappropriate, and then the cost of the equipment itself. You have to ask yourself, surely, is there no justice for the Mwananchi in this country? Can the Mwananchi not enjoy the benefits of this money called tax that the government takes from him? Is it not possible? And then when the people who are actually elected by this same citizenry to ensure that their interests are looked after do the things that we see them doing, then you have to ask yourself, surely.
Do you really have a leg up to tout about your country and say that actually, you know what, I am the focus as a citizen. I am the one for which all this is being done. And I actually feel, they're taking care of me.
But do they even have a leg up to even claim that other people in their midst are the wrongdoers and the other people? Because, in all honesty, do we have a list of people who actually protested, apart from the two we mentioned, who said, no, folks, can we think of some... Senator Rengo mentioned something. Senator Dulu mentioned something. But did you hear concerted voice and loudly saying, folks, let's do a better job of this thing. This thing is not really what we expected. We need something from which a solution can be arrived at. Something with a clear roadmap as to what should be done. Because for it to be rejected, it means there was no clear roadmap.
Yep. There wasn't any.
Yes.
And, you know, the other thing is, right now, there are other investigations that are being conducted by the Senate. One of them is what happened with the COVID-19 funds, right? The one that is investigating the issue of KEMSA. If that KEMSA committee does not pick a leaf and borrow a leaf from this report that has been rejected, if they don't actually see, okay, so what we are now supposed to do is produce concrete recommendations. Remember, we spoke to one of the members of this committee, and this is the Narok Senator Ledama Olekina, and he told us, let me tell you, this one we are going to make sure that we get to the bottom of it. Good talk. If Ledama Olekina and his colleagues in that ad hoc committee that is investigating the issue of KEMSA and COVID-19, if they do not come on and tell us so and so, so and so, so and so are the ones that should go to court, they should just save us, spare us,
now,
leave this whole thing, just allow us to move on. Let's allow EACC and DCI to just continue with their work. There's no point of pretending that the Senate is investigating anything.
And actually, while the DCI and EACC are doing their work, they should also investigate the senators.
The senators as well.
Yes. While we're at it, let them do a thorough job of it.
It's a matter that has actually been raised many times. Whenever you see these investigations happening and being conducted by parliamentarians, whether it's a National Assembly, whether it's the Senate, there's the issue of partiality and impartiality on the part of individual members of these committees, individual members of Senate, and whether their own personal interests are likely to come and interfere with the output of a report of a certain investigation. Should EACC then just launch investigations into these committees? For example, should EACC conduct an audit and investigate the members of this committee on what they did, look at how they were deliberating, the deliberations of this ad hoc committee, to the point where it came up with a report, and find out why is it that you gave us a half-baked report? Can't just be giving us reports. It is rejected in the House. Some of them are just going and high-fiving each other.
And then we, the public, have spent money on this thing, and this is what we get. 30 million shillings down the line, and this is what we get.
And this is what we get.
No.
And they high-five each other. And they talk to their bosses, their superiors, the people who had paid them, and they say, Silikwambia, this thing will take this route. It'll go to the Senate. It'll be rejected. That's the end of it.
Finished. Nobody will pick it up again.
Man. I told you.
Relax. Everything is okay.
Yeah. Nothing's going to happen out of this. Now let's wait for...
Now just see me.
Yeah. Let's wait for EACC. Those ones will take long.
You know, that thinking is the thinking of a time when you could more or less predict what's going to happen tomorrow. We live in a time when you actually can't do that. You can think, you can predict. You know, the ramifications of COVID are so far-reaching that it would be foolhardy to even try and figure out what that far-reaching means. Because anything that touches on the lives of human beings usually is tumultuous, is a problem. But in combination with just the lives, it's the livelihood. Goodness gracious me. You then have a totally different animal. It's a powder keg. And then you throw in complications that arise from unemployment, complications that arise from whatever else has arisen from COVID. And then you in leadership are behaving as though all this has never happened, the changes have not occurred, so you can continue doing things as you've done them before in a manner that suits you. That's short-sightedness in its purest form.
It's just greed.
Yep.
They are long-sighted. If you actually now want to be very, very technical about it, they're very long-sighted. They saw the opportunity. By the time you're campaigning that let's establish an ad hoc committee, you've gone and sat somewhere with a client and told the client, you know what, this thing at some point, it's going to erupt. So let's manage it. Let's go and be the ones that lead the clarion call for how to have an establishment of a committee. Let me be a member of that committee. I will ensure that the final result is nothing. Nothing happens to you. Probably, as I said, that's what I'm saying, these people, it's long-term strategy.
By the time it's reaching where you can see, it's like they say, an iceberg it's literally just the tip of the iceberg. Under the water, there's so much more that you can't see, right? So by the time you see an investigation like this being done at Senate level, the total mess that has been going on, people negotiating here and there, these assurances being given, don't worry, by the time it gets to committee stage, the back end work has already been done. Back office has been operating for a very long time.
Yep.
And by the time all of you are seeing an investigation being done, the end has already been reached. And that's the unfortunate thing.
You know, it's a very human thing that we're discussing here. You know, for the longest time, do you think that monarchies that existed on this planet thought a time would come when they'd come to an end? Never.
Never. They were going to be there for eternity.
Never. Do you think, for instance, that dictators whom we know of, or even in this century, because we still have them in this century, die hard dictators, no sugarcoating, again, in its purest sense. Do you think that they have those positions thinking that at some point they will cease to be who they are? No, they don't. But they do. Two things that have caught my attention in the recent past. When the former president, the former now late president of Egypt, Mubarak, every time he was in court, the guy was in a cage. It wasn't a cell. He was in a cage. And I was looking at a picture yesterday of the former president of Sudan. He's also in a cage. Now, these are people who at some point in their lives almost had a life and death power over their people.
Yep.
Literally.
Yep.
Not figuratively, not religiously, of real.
Right, of real.
Yes. Now, one passed away. One gentleman passed away. The other one is still alive. Do you think that if they had foreseen that this would happen, would they not have taken steps to ensure that it doesn't happen? Yes. But here we are. Times change, and COVID has fast-forwarded these prospects of change in a way that no one could have anticipated or foreseen. Very many things that were hitherto thought of as not being possible are now possible. Things which were thought of that could not happen are now happening. And it's going to continue. Even as we think about these prospects of COVID coming to an end, people welcome the thought because you assume things will go back to what they were before. They won't. We are in a season where some of these changes are irreversible.
But you know, that somehow sounds city like the way just people say, hi Dhuru, siku yako itafika. It's okay. Your day will come.
Actually,
what will happen?
It's okay. One day.
Actually, Eric,
this too shall pass.
No, it isn't one day. This one is any day soon. This really is my point. The days when you could think along those lines, those days are not with us anymore. They're not. They're not. And this thinking, you hear me saying this all the time. This thinking that you're just going to steal from the public and get away with it, those days are gone. You will be caught, you will be arrested, which reminds me, there's a time, this one I have to say, a Kenyan student was killed at Kampala University. It was allegedly killed by a watchman. Now, the government statement from that particular incident read as follows, that it is with deep sorrow, I'm paraphrasing, of course, that we announce the death of this student, but we want the parents and the Kenyan public to be assured that the perpetrators of this crime will be arrested, will be found guilty and jailed.
Rest assured.
Yes.
They will be jailed.
Yes. They'll be found guilty and jailed. Don't doubt that this thing is just going to serve.
Not just that you're arresting.
No. And the same applies to our leaders. Rest assured, you are going to be found guilty and you will get jailed.
Look, I mean,
my issue is the when.
That's the problem, because you want it now.
Yeah,
right?
and because
Eric wants it last week.
Yeah.
Not
Some
really.
of these things, because the order of the day is so long, was that it would appear that people, got away with these things, right? Now, in order to change that and bring about a different scenario, that's going to take time. It's going to take time. Look at what the EACC now is compared to what it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, where people said, and even called different things, where people say it was a toothless agency, big arrests were not possible. And then you see big prosecutions were not possible. And then you start to see that coming through. There will come a time where people will say the big names who, or even smaller names who were involved in these huge heists, somehow seem to get away with it.
You know why I'm saying that?
It'll come a time
why I wonder now is because
now
now I'm alive. All right? I don't want to continue living.
When you're not there.
Yeah, I don't want to continue living in suffering. And then in some future generation, when I've left the earth, is when now things are getting better. I want things to be better now.
Eric, I was of that exact view of yours, peppered a little bit and even spiced a little bit, okay? Before the Kibaki era. I saw things that I didn't think I would see in my lifetime. I actually saw real changes taking place. I saw. And even I thought I understood what the political space meant. In this government, the Uhuru government, I have seen the idea of that political space in a way that I never thought it was possible. Because I can compare the countries that think and tell us they have better space. My goodness gracious me, we do have space in this country. So, because I can see these changes, that is why I'm convinced. It's evidence-based. It's evidence. This is not wishful thinking.
You've seen the change.
No, I've seen and I keep seeing them and I know they're coming. I know.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. Let's wait. So, tell us today's proverb.
You may well have 2 legs, but you can't climb 2 trees at the same time.
You may well have 2 legs, but you cannot climb 2 trees at the same time. Meaning?
Eric, let's start with the obvious. So you have 2 legs. Okay. Look at 2 trees. Okay. Perhaps there is a saying that is akin to this, that you can't serve 2 masters at the same time. Okay. Now that is something you can actually take and then extrapolate widely and broadly.
Cannot serve 2 masters.
You will serve one and the other one will not be very well served. Yes. It happens.
Great wisdom there from the Ethiopians.
Yes.
Thank you very much for tuning into the Situation Room today. Tomorrow, we'll be speaking to a leader from Tanzania. And who's this?
Fatma Karume.
And Fatma Karume is?
Well, many things. Right now, we want to call an advocate for good governance in Tanzania.
All right.
Former Tanganyika Law Society chairperson.
And we'll be speaking to her tomorrow, seeking to understand the affairs and lay of the land in Tanzania as they gear towards a general election, a presidential election later this year. So joining us tomorrow for that conversation and more. Thank you very much for tuning in today. CT Muga, Nduoko and Eric Latif saying goodbye. Enjoy the music from now until 3, and then Monique will be here to take you home 3 to 7, and then the adult in the room. Good morning. It's now 10 o'clock.